She had everything money could buy, except the one thing she'd never learned to trust. Isabella Laurent controlled boardrooms worth billions, but standing in a snow-covered parking lot at 3 in the morning, mascara streaking her face, she couldn't control the tears. The man holding her wasn't a business partner. He wasn't from her world. He was a single father who'd left a networking event early to read his daughter a bedtime story. And somehow, that simple choice had unraveled 30 years of carefully constructed armor. This is a story about power, grief, and the terrifying risk of choosing something real. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The ballroom glittered like a jewel box, all crystal chandeliers and ice sculptures shaped like swans. Isabella Laurent stood near the bar, champagne flute in hand, watching the room with the same precision she brought to quarterly earnings reports. The winter charity gala at the Westbrook Hotel was less about charity and more about proximity to power, and she knew it. Everyone here wanted something. She'd worn the midnight blue Valentino because it photographed well and because the cut suggested wealth without desperation. Her dark hair was pulled into a low chignon that cost $400 to achieve, but looked effortless. At 30, she was the youngest CEO on the Forbes list, and she wore that fact like armor. Isabella. Marcus Chen appeared at her elbow, already angling for her attention. Board member. Old money. Useful connections in Singapore. She cataloged him automatically. I was hoping we could discuss the Brennan acquisition. My firm has some concerns about Marcus. It's a charity gala. She smiled, the kind that didn't reach her eyes. Let's pretend we care about orphans for at least another hour. He laughed, but she could see the calculation behind it. This was why she came to these things. Not for the champagne or the networking, but because absence would be noticed. In her world, being seen mattered more than being genuine. The string quartet transitioned into something Vivaldi adjacent. Conversations rose and fell like tides. Isabella scanned the room again. Mayor's wife at 3 o'clock. Tech startup CEO trying too hard at 9. Venture capitalist she'd ghosted last month, wisely keeping his distance at 6. Then she saw him. He stood near the coat check, completely still in a room designed for motion. Mid-30s, wearing a suit that fit but wasn't tailored, the kind you could get at a decent department store if you knew what you were looking for. Dark hair, strong jaw, tired eyes. He was checking his phone with an intensity that suggested actual concern rather than the performative busyness most people here deployed. Isabella frowned. She knew everyone in this room, or at least she knew their net worth and professional affiliations. This man registered as nobody, which meant he was either very good at being invisible or didn't belong here at all. She watched as he moved toward the exit, not networking, not working the room, not even pretending to care about the ice swans. Just leaving. Excuse me, Marcus. She set down her champagne and followed, though she couldn't have explained why if someone had asked. The lobby was quieter, populated by hotel guests rather than gala attendees. The man had stopped near the revolving doors, phone pressed to his ear. His whole posture had changed, shoulders relaxed, face soft in a way that made him look younger. "Hey, baby girl," he said, and Isabella stopped walking. His voice carried warmth she hadn't heard inside the ballroom all night. I know. But you promised Grandma you'd try the carrots this time, remember?" Isabella pretended to examine a painting on the wall, some abstract thing that probably cost more than most people's cars. Uh-huh. Yes, I'm sure the dog would like them, but that's not the same as you eating them. He laughed, genuine and unguarded. All right, go brush your teeth. I'll be home in 20 minutes. We can read 2 chapters tonight since I missed bedtime. Deal? A pause. Isabella could almost hear the small voice on the other end. Love you too, Emma Bean. Sweet dreams. He lowered the phone, and something about the set of his shoulders, relief mixed with guilt, made Isabella's chest tighten in a way she didn't recognize. He'd left early. Not for another meeting, not for a strategic exit, but for a bedtime story. Checking out early? The words left her mouth before she'd decided to speak. He turned, startled, and she got a better look at his face. Handsome in an understated way, with lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled more than she did. Sorry? He blinked at her, clearly trying to place her. The gala. She gestured toward the ballroom. Most people stay until the auction. Oh, yeah. He pocketed his phone, looking vaguely uncomfortable. I'm not really... This isn't my usual scene. A colleague had an extra ticket, thought it might be good for the firm, but... He shrugged. My daughter had a rough day. Wanted to make sure she was okay. Isabella studied him. No one left events like this for their kids. They sent nannies, they FaceTime from the bathroom, they compartmentalized. That's what successful people did. How old? 8. His face changed when he talked about her, like someone had turned on a light behind his eyes. Emma, she's 8, which means everything is either the best thing ever or a complete catastrophe. Tonight the cafeteria ran out of chocolate milk, so he smiled, self-deprecating. World-ending stuff. And you're driving home to read to her. 2 chapters of Percy Jackson. He said it like it was obvious, like there was no other possible choice. We're on book 3. She's very invested in whether Annabeth and Percy end up together. Isabella felt something crack in her chest, hairline thin but definitely there. She'd spent her entire adult life around people who optimized every moment, who saw relationships as networking opportunities and time as a resource to be allocated. This man had left a room full of powerful people to read about fictional Greek gods to his 8-year-old daughter. She trailed off, unsure what word she was looking for. Sweet felt condescending. Nice felt insufficient. Probably weird, right? He rubbed the back of his neck. My colleague said I should stay, make connections. But Emma's had a tough year, and I don't know. Some things matter more than connections. What happened? The question came out sharper than she intended. This year. His expression shuddered slightly. Her mom died 2 years ago. We're still figuring it out. I'm sorry. Isabella meant it, though the words felt inadequate. She'd lost her mother young too, though the circumstances were different. Her mother had simply left. No tragedy, no sympathy. Just a decision that Isabella wasn't worth staying for. Thank you. He glanced at his phone again. Lucas Reed. A woman's voice cut through the lobby. They both turned. Sharon Kim, senior partner at Reed & Kim Associates, strode toward them in a gown that cost more than Lucas's suit, probably more than his car. There you are. I've been looking everywhere. The mayor wants to meet you. Excellent opportunity to discuss the waterfront project. Sharon, I was just heading out. Don't be ridiculous. This is exactly the kind of connection we need. Sharon's gaze flicked to Isabella, and recognition sparked. Miss Laurent, what a pleasure. I wasn't aware you knew Lucas. We just met, Isabella said smoothly. He was telling me about his daughter. Sharon's smile tightened. Yes, well, family is important, of course. But so is the future of the firm. She turned back to Lucas. 10 minutes. Just shake the mayor's hand, show your face. Then you can go read bedtime stories or whatever. The dismissiveness in her tone made Isabella's jaw clench. Lucas noticed she saw something flicker across his face, but he just nodded. 10 minutes, he agreed quietly. Excellent. Sharon was already moving back toward the ballroom, expecting him to follow. Lucas looked at Isabella, and for a moment something passed between them. Solidarity, maybe. Or recognition of some shared exhaustion with rooms like these, with people like Sharon who treated children as inconvenient accessories to adult ambition. It was nice meeting you, Ms. Laurent. Isabella. She wasn't sure why she offered her first name. She rarely did. Isabella. He tested it, gave her a small smile. I'm Lucas, obviously, and I should go. 10 minutes. She stepped back. Your daughter's waiting. He nodded and turned toward the ballroom, but paused at the entrance. For what it's worth, I think you're right to leave early, too. I haven't left. Not yet. He glanced around the lobby, the expensive art, the marble floors, the carefully curated atmosphere of wealth. But you look like you want to. Then he was gone, disappearing back into the glittering chaos, and Isabella stood alone in the lobby, wondering why a complete stranger's observation had landed like a punch to the sternum. She didn't leave early. She stayed for the auction, bid on a weekend in Napa she'd never use, made the right small talk with the right people. But she kept looking for Lucas in the crowd, and when she didn't find him, she felt something she couldn't name. Relief that he'd actually gone home? Disappointment that he'd left without saying goodbye? At midnight, she stood on the ballroom balcony, cold air biting through her dress, and called her assistant. "Victoria, that gala tonight. Get me the guest list." "The full list? That's over 300 people, Isabella." "I know. Send it tomorrow morning." She paused. "And run a search. Lucas Reed. Architect, I think. Works at Reed and Kim Associates. Looking to hire? Just curious." She could hear Victoria's skepticism through the phone. Isabella Laurent didn't do curious. She did strategic. She did purposeful. She did calculated. "I'll have it on your desk by 8. Isabella ended the call and stared out at the city. Snow had started falling, soft and thick, blanketing the streets below. Somewhere out there, Lucas was probably finishing Chapter 2 of Percy Jackson, probably tucking his daughter in, probably living a life so fundamentally different from hers that the distance between them felt astronomical. But he'd looked at her in that lobby and seen something, seen through her. And that shouldn't have mattered. It shouldn't have. But it did. 3 days later, Isabella sat in her corner office on the 42nd floor. Victoria's research spread across her desk. Lucas Reed, 32, widowed, 1 daughter, senior architect at Reed and Kim, specialized in sustainable urban development, lived in a modest neighborhood in Brookline. No social media presence beyond a LinkedIn that hadn't been updated in 2 years. No scandal, no debt, no red flags. Just an ordinary life as far as she could tell. Boring, she told herself. Not interesting. She was about to close the file when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Is this Isabella Laurent? This is Lucas Reed. Sharon gave me your number. Hope that's okay. She mentioned you might be interested in the waterfront project. Would you have time for coffee?" Isabella stared at the message. Sharon had given him her number. For business. Of course, this was networking. This was normal. She should say no. She had meetings stacked until 7. A board presentation to prep. A merger negotiation that required her full attention. Thursday. 2 p.m. Café Noir on Boylston. She hit send before she could reconsider. His response came 30 seconds later. "See you then." Mount. Thursday arrived wrapped in the kind of bitter cold that made Boston feel like a test of endurance. Isabella considered canceling twice. This wasn't strategic. Lucas Reed had nothing she needed, no connections she didn't already have, no expertise that would benefit Laurent Holdings. This was just coffee with a widowed architect who'd left a gala early to read to his kid. But at 1:55 she walked into Café Noir, snow melting off her Burberry coat. Lucas was already there, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee and the slightly nervous expression of someone who wasn't sure this meeting made sense either. "Hi." He stood when she approached, a gesture so old-fashioned it almost made her smile. "I got you a cappuccino. Assumed that was safe. If you want something else, it's fine." She sat, unwinding her scarf. "Thank you." For a moment, they just looked at each other. The cafe hummed with afternoon energy. Students on laptops, business lunches winding down, the hiss of the espresso machine providing white noise. "So," Lucas said finally, "Sharon mentioned you were interested in the waterfront project." "I'm not." He blinked. "Oh. I don't know anything about the waterfront project, and honestly, I don't care." Sharon was making assumptions. Isabella wrapped her hands around the warm cup. "I'm sorry if she pressured you into this." "She didn't pressure me." He smiled, something genuine breaking through the awkwardness. "I mean, she strongly suggested it would be good for my career, but I could have said no." "Why didn't you?" "Because I wanted to see you again." The honesty of it knocked her off balance. No game, no pretense, just a simple statement of fact delivered with the same straightforward sincerity he'd used talking to his daughter on the phone. "Why?" Isabella heard herself ask. Lucas considered this, stirring his coffee slowly. "At the gala, you asked about Emma. Most people, when they find out I'm a single dad, they do this thing where they either pity me or treat it like a fun fact, like I have an interesting hobby. But you asked what happened this year. Like you actually wanted to know, like it mattered." "It did matter." "Yeah." He met her eyes. "I could tell. And then you stood there while Sharon basically dismissed my kid as an inconvenience, and you got angry." "I saw it. Just for a second, but it was real." Isabella looked away, uncomfortable with being read so easily. Sharon sounds difficult to work with. She's brilliant and ambitious and has built an incredible firm. She's also convinced that anything personal is a weakness. He shrugged. We disagree on that point. And yet you work for her. With her. Technically, it's a partnership, even if she acts like it's her show. He grinned. Besides, the work is good. We're trying to build things that actually help communities, not just maximize profit. It's slow. It's frustrating, but it matters. Isabella studied him. She'd spent 15 years clawing her way to the top of Laurent Holdings, fighting off board members who thought she was too young, too female, too emotional. She'd learned to never show weakness, never let personal feelings cloud professional judgment. And here was Lucas, freely admitting he'd turned down career advancement to read bedtime stories. You think I'm naive, he said, reading her expression. No. The word came out harder than she intended. I think you're either very brave or very lucky. Lucky how? To have something that matters more than ambition. Most people spend their whole lives looking for that and never find it. Lucas set down his coffee. Emma didn't happen because I was looking for meaning. Her mom, Claire, we met in college. Got married young, probably too young. Had Emma, thought we had it all figured out. His voice went quiet. Then Claire got sick, ovarian cancer. By the time they caught it, stage 4. She lived 18 months. Lucas, you asked why I left the gala early. He continued as if she hadn't spoken. It's because Emma's the only thing I have left of Claire. The only proof that any of it was real. And I won't treat her like she's secondary to anything. Not business, not networking, not my career, nothing. The cafe noise seemed to fade, and Isabella found herself gripping her coffee cup hard enough to hurt. No one's ever chosen me like that, she said, the words escaping before she could stop them. Lucas's expression softened. What do you mean? She shouldn't answer. This wasn't why she was here. She didn't do vulnerable, didn't do honest, didn't let strangers see the cracks. But something about the way he looked at her, without pity, without judgment, just patient attention, made the walls feel exhausting to maintain. My mother left when I was 7. Just decided motherhood wasn't for her, I guess. My father... She paused, choosing words carefully. He loved me, I think, but only when I was useful. When I got good grades, when I won awards, when I made him look good. And every relationship I've had since has followed the same pattern. People stay as long as I'm valuable. The second I'm not, they leave, Lucas finished quietly. Yes. That's not love, Isabella. That's transaction. I know. She looked down at her coffee. But it's all I've ever known. They sat in silence. Outside, snow began to fall again, coating the street in fresh white. Isabella watched it through the window, thinking about her father in his study, always working, always demanding excellence. Thinking about Marcus Chen at the gala, wanting her attention only for what it could do for him. Thinking about every boyfriend, every friend, every colleague who'd stayed exactly as long as she remained useful. Emma asked about you, Lucas said. Isabella's head snapped up. What? After the gala. She wanted to know why I was late, so I told her about meeting this woman who seemed sad, even though she was at a party. Emma said, maybe you needed a friend. I don't need... Isabella stopped herself. Your 8-year-old is analyzing strangers? She's perceptive, too perceptive sometimes. He smiled. She also asked if you were pretty, and when I said yes, she told me I should invite you for pancakes. Pancakes? Sunday morning tradition. I make them. Emma critiques my technique. We argue about whether chocolate chips count as a food group. He hesitated. She was serious about the invitation. So am I. Isabella's first instinct was to say no. This was already too much, too personal, too fast, too far outside her carefully controlled existence. Meeting his daughter meant something. It implied a connection she wasn't ready to name. But then she thought about Sunday mornings in her empty penthouse, about eating yogurt over the sink while reading financial reports, about the last time anyone had invited her somewhere just because they wanted her company. I can't this Sunday, she heard herself say. But maybe next week? Lucas's smile transformed his entire face. Yeah, next week works. They talked for 2 hours that Thursday afternoon until the cafe staff started cleaning around them and Lucas remembered he had to pick Emma up from school. They talked about architecture and business, about Boston winters, and whether the city would ever fix the T-surface things, mostly, but underneath ran something deeper. As they stood on the sidewalk outside, Lucas pulled out his phone. "Can I get your number? The real one, not the business line?" Isabella gave it to him, watching him save it with a focus that suggested this actually mattered to him. "I'll text you," he said. "About pancakes. And whatever else." "Whatever else?" she repeated. Not quite a question. "Yeah." He looked at her, snowflakes catching in his dark hair. "I'd like to get to know you, Isabella, the real you, not the CEO version." "They're the same person." "I don't think they are." He said it gently, without accusation. "But I'd like to find out." Then he was gone, disappearing into the snowy afternoon, and Isabella stood on Boylston Street feeling like the ground had shifted beneath her feet. The text started that night. Lucas. "Made it home. Emma wants to know if you like blueberries or chocolate chips in your pancakes. This is apparently crucial information." Isabella. "Blueberries. Is this a test?" Lucas. "Everything with Emma is a test. You passed. She says blueberries are the sophisticated choice." Isabella. "Your daughter sounds terrifying." Lucas. "You have no idea." Isabella found herself smiling at her phone, alone in her penthouse, which felt like a dangerous development. The texts continued over the next week. Small things. Lucas sending a photo of a building he was working on, asking her opinion. Isabella forwarding him an article about sustainable urban development, adding, "Thought you'd find this interesting." Nothing groundbreaking, nothing that couldn't be explained as friendly professional interest. But late at night, when she couldn't sleep, she'd scroll through their conversation and feel something warm and terrifying unfurl in her chest. Friday evening, her father called. "Isabella, I heard you had coffee with some architect. Lucas Reed?" She closed her eyes. Of course he'd heard. Richard Laurent knew everything that happened in Boston's business circles. "It was just coffee, Dad." "Nothing is just anything with you. You're smarter than that." His voice carried the same distant authority it always had. "What's the angle? Is he connected to something?" "There's no angle. He's..." She paused, unsure how to explain Lucas to her father, to anyone. "He's just someone I met. You don't do that. You don't meet people without purpose." Richard sounded genuinely confused. "Is this about the waterfront project? Because if you're considering expansion into commercial real estate, it's not about business, Dad." Silence on the other end. Then, "Be careful, Isabella. People like us, we don't have the luxury of casual relationships. Everyone wants something." "Not everyone. Especially everyone." He softened slightly, which somehow made it worse. "I'm not trying to be harsh. I'm trying to protect you. You're my daughter, the only thing I have left that matters. But you're also the future of this company, and that means being smart about who you let close." After he hung up, Isabella sat in the dark of her living room, looking out at the city lights, thinking about her father's words. "The only thing I have left that matters." He'd said it like love, but it felt like ownership. Her phone buzzed. Lucas. Random question. "You ever build a blanket fort?" Isabella. "When I was 7. Why?" Lucas. "Emma's convinced they're structurally unsound. I'm trying to prove her wrong. It's not going well." Lucas. Photo of a collapsed pile of pillows and blankets. Isabella. "That's definitely unsound." Lucas. "Whose side are you on?" Isabella. "Engineering and gravity." Lucas. "Traitor." She was still smiling when she fell asleep. Sunday came too slowly and too fast. Isabella changed outfits 3 times before settling on jeans and a cashmere sweater. Casual, but not trying too hard casual. She'd never been nervous about meeting someone before. Nervous about presentations, about negotiations, about board meetings where millions hung in the balance. Yes, but not about pancakes with a widowed architect and his 8-year-old daughter. Lucas's apartment was in Brookline, a comfortable middle-class neighborhood where people actually knew their neighbors. She parked her Tesla next to a row of sensible Hondas and Toyotas, feeling suddenly self-conscious. The building was old but well-maintained, with window boxes that probably had flowers in summer. She found apartment 3B and knocked before she could overthink it. Lucas opened the door, and the warmth that spilled out wasn't just temperature. It was the smell of coffee and something baking, the sound of a child singing off-key to a song Isabella didn't recognize. "Hey," he smiled, stepping back to let her in. "You found it okay?" GPS is a modern miracle. She stepped inside, taking in the space. It was small, lived in, nothing like her minimalist penthouse. Books everywhere. Emma's drawings taped to the walls, a pile of shoes by the door that suggested people actually came and went here. "Dad, is that her?" A small voice called from what must be the kitchen. "Emma, we talked about this. Come say hello properly." A girl appeared in the doorway, small for 8, with dark curls in her father's eyes. She studied Isabella with an intensity that would have been unsettling from an adult. "You're really pretty," Emma announced. "Dad said you were, but sometimes dads exaggerate about stuff." "Emma, it's okay." Isabella knelt down to Emma's eye level, a gesture she'd learned from years of reading about how to connect with people. Except this time it didn't feel calculated. "Thank you, you're pretty too." "I know." Emma tilted her head. "You're really tall. Are you taller than Dad?" "In heels, yes." "Are you wearing heels now?" "No." "Then probably not." Emma seemed satisfied with this assessment. "Do you actually like blueberries, or were you just being polite?" Isabella blinked. "I actually like them." "Good. Because I already made the batter, and it would be weird to change it now." Emma turned and headed back to the kitchen, clearly expecting them to follow. Lucas caught Isabella's eye, apologetic and amused in equal measure. "I tried to teach her about subtlety. It didn't take." "I like her," Isabella said, surprising herself with how much she meant it. The kitchen was small, crowded with 3 people in it. Emma had apparently taken charge of the operation, directing Lucas on heat levels and timing with the authority of a seasoned chef. Isabella perched on a stool at the counter, watching them move around each other with a practiced ease that spoke of routine, of Sunday after Sunday doing exactly this. "You need to flip it now," Emma instructed. "It's not ready yet." "The edges are bubbling. That means it's ready. Mom taught you this." Something passed over Lucas's face. Grief, love, memory all tangled together. But he just flipped the pancake, perfectly golden, and Emma nodded approvingly. "See? I was right." "You're always right," Lucas agreed, plating the pancake. "I know." Isabella found herself smiling, watching them. This casual domesticity, this easy affection, was so far from anything she'd experienced growing up. Her childhood had been quiet dinners with her father, discussing her grades, her accomplishments, her value. There'd been no mess, no spontaneity, no 8-year-old generals commanding the kitchen. "So," Emma said, turning to Isabella while Lucas started another pancake. "What do you do?" "I run a company." "What kind of company?" "We buy other companies and make them better." Emma considered this. "That sounds boring." "Emma," Lucas's voice held warning. "What? I'm just being honest. You said honesty is important." Isabella laughed, actually laughed. "No, she's right. It is kind of boring, lots of meetings and paperwork." "Then why do you do it?" Emma asked with the blunt curiosity of childhood. "Because..." Isabella paused. Why did she do it? "Because I'm good at it, and because it's what my father does, and what his father did. It's sort of what I'm supposed to do." "But do you like it?" No one had ever asked her that before. Not in 23 years of grooming to take over Laurent Holdings. "Sometimes," she said finally, "when I'm solving a problem or helping a company that's struggling, but not always." Emma nodded, satisfied with this answer. "I want to be a marine biologist because I like dolphins, and because nobody tells marine biologists what to do." "That second part might not be true," Lucas said, sliding pancakes onto plates. "Well, it should be." They ate at a small table wedged into the kitchen corner. Emma dominated the conversation, asking Isabella questions that ranged from reasonable, "Do you have any pets?" to wildly inappropriate, "Why don't you have a husband?" to genuinely perceptive, "Are you sad a lot?" Lucas tried to intervene, but Isabella waved him off. There was something refreshing about Emma's directness, about not having to perform or calculate every response. I don't have a husband because I work too much, Isabella answered. And yes, sometimes I'm sad. But doesn't everyone get sad sometimes? Yeah, but some people are sad in a way that doesn't go away. Emma poked at her pancakes. Like Dad, after Mom died. He smiled, but it wasn't real smiling. Not for a long time. Lucas's hand stilled on his coffee cup. But it's better now, Emma continued, oblivious to the weight of what she was saying. He does real smiling again. Like yesterday, when he was texting you. He was smiling at his phone like a weirdo. Emma, Lucas said, but he was fighting a smile now. Isabella felt her chest constrict. She looked at Lucas across the table, this man who'd lost his wife, who'd rebuilt a life around his daughter, who'd somehow found a way to smile again, and felt the ground shift beneath her once more. After breakfast, Emma declared she needed to show Isabella her room, which apparently wasn't optional. Lucas stayed behind to clean up, and Isabella followed Emma down a short hallway lined with more of the girls' artwork. Emma's room was exactly what an 8-year-old's room should be. Books spilling off shelves, stuffed animals in a pile, a poster of dolphins above the bed. But Isabella's attention caught on a corkboard above the desk, covered in photos. Most were of Emma and Lucas, at the beach, building a snowman, Halloween costumes. But in the center, pride of place, was a family photo. Younger Lucas, a beautiful dark-haired woman, and tiny Emma, maybe 4 years old. All of them laughing at something outside the frame. That's my mom, Emma said, following Isabella's gaze. She was really nice and funny, and she made the best cookies, even better than Dad's. She looks lovely. She was. Emma climbed onto her bed, hugging a stuffed dolphin. Dad doesn't like to talk about her much. He thinks it makes me sad. But I like remembering. It's like, she's still here, kind of, in the stories. Isabella sat carefully on the edge of the bed. I think that's very wise. Are your parents dead? Emma! Lucas appeared in the doorway, horrified. You can't just ask people that. Why not? It's not a bad word. My mother left when I was young, Isabella said, surprising herself again. My father's alive. We're not very close. Emma processed this with her usual seriousness. That's sad. Dads are important. Some dads are, Isabella agreed, thinking of Lucas in the kitchen, of the easy affection between them, thinking of her own father, who loved her like a business asset. Will you come back? Emma asked suddenly. For pancakes again? Isabella looked at Lucas, who was watching his daughter with an expression she couldn't quite read. Then back at Emma, who was staring at her with those too perceptive eyes. Would you like me to? Yeah, you're not as boring as Dad said business people usually are. And you didn't lie about the blueberries. High praise, Lucas murmured. Then yes, Isabella heard herself say. I'll come back. Emma smiled, Lucas's smile on a smaller face, and something in Isabella's chest cracked wider. Our butts. They stood in the hallway outside the apartment an hour later, Emma occupied with a book inside. The building was quiet, Sunday afternoon lazy and warm. I'm sorry, Lucas said. Don't apologize. She's amazing. She's a lot. She's honest. It's refreshing. Isabella leaned against the wall, studying him. You're really good with her. I'm terrified with her, he corrected. Every day I'm convinced I'm screwing it up somehow, that I'm not enough, that she needs more than I can give her. She doesn't think that. How do you know? Because of the way she looks at you. Like you're her whole world. Like she's safe. Isabella's voice went quiet. I never looked at my father like that. Lucas stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something cedar and clean. Isabella, can I ask you something? Okay. Why did you say yes to coffee? Why did you come today? I don't have anything you need. No connections, no business opportunities. I'm just an architect who makes pancakes and reads Percy Jackson. So why? She could lie. She could spin this into something strategic, something that made sense in her carefully ordered world. But Emma's question echoed in her mind. Are you sad a lot? Because you chose your daughter over networking, she said finally. Because you left a room full of important people to read bedtime stories. Because when you looked at me in that lobby, You saw something real, and I... She paused, forcing herself to continue. I've spent 30 years being what other people needed me to be. And I'm tired, Lucas. I'm so tired of performing. And you don't need me to be anything except honest. So I'm trying. He was very close now, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. I see you, he said softly. Not the CEO, not Richard Laurent's daughter. You. And I like what I see. Isabella's breath caught. No one had ever said that to her before. No one had ever separated her from her accomplishments, from her value, from what she could do for them. I should go, she whispered, not moving. Okay. I have meetings tomorrow. Early. Okay. I don't know what this is. Neither do I. He smiled, and it was the same smile Emma had given her earlier, open, real, without calculation. But I'd like to find out, if you would. She should say no, should protect herself, protect him, protect the careful distance she maintained from everyone, should remember her father's warning that everyone wants something. But Lucas wasn't everyone. Yeah, she said. I'd like that too. She left before she could change her mind, before the fear could catch up with the wanting. But as she drove home through the snowy streets, she found herself already thinking about next Sunday, about blueberry pancakes and Emma's questions and the way Lucas looked at her like she mattered for reasons that had nothing to do with profit margins or quarterly earnings. That night, her father called again. Isabella, we need to talk about the Henderson merger. I've been reviewing the terms. Dad, it's Sunday. Business doesn't stop for weekends, you know that. Papers rustled in the background. I'm concerned about the liability clauses. We need to push for better indemnification. Isabella listened to him talk, the familiar cadence of his voice, the way every conversation circled back to work, to strategy, to the company. When had they last talked about anything else? Had they ever? Dad, she interrupted, when's the last time you asked how I was? Not how the business was, not how the merger's going, me. Silence. Then, is something wrong? No, She looked around her empty penthouse, at the expensive furniture and the city view and the perfect loneliness of it all. I met someone. I wanted to tell you. Who? Anyone I should know? His name is Lucas. He's an architect. He has a daughter, and he's kind, Dad. He's genuinely kind, and he makes me feel like I might be worth more than my last quarterly report. Another pause. Isabella, I hope you're being careful. You're in a vulnerable position right now, taking over more of the company. People will try to take advantage. Not everyone is looking for an angle. In our world, everyone is. His voice hardened. I love you, sweetheart, but you can't afford to be naive. Not with what you stand to inherit. After he hung up, Isabella sat in the dark, thinking about two different definitions of love. Her father's, protective, conditional, measured in stock prices and succession plans. And Lucas's, the kind that made you leave galas early, that prioritized bedtime stories over career advancement, that chose connection over calculation. She fell asleep wondering which one was real and which one was just another form of transaction she'd learned to accept. The texts became a constant, not overwhelming, not needy, just present. Lucas would send her photos of buildings he passed that had interesting architectural details, asking if she thought they'd be worth preserving or should come down. Isabella found herself forwarding him articles about urban development, about sustainable business practices, about things she'd normally read alone in her office at midnight. One Tuesday, 3 weeks after the pancake breakfast, he texted at noon. Quick question, you free tonight? Isabella looked at her calendar. Dinner with a potential investor, then drinks with her legal team to discuss the Henderson merger. She started typing no, and then stopped. What did you have in mind? Emma has a school thing. Winter concert. It's going to be objectively terrible. 20 second graders murdering jingle bells. But she asked if you might come. No pressure. I know it's last minute. Isabella stared at the message. Emma had asked for her. An 8-year-old who barely knew her wanted her at a school concert. She called Victoria. Cancel dinner with Morrison, reschedule for Thursday, and push the legal meeting to tomorrow morning. Isabella, Morrison's flying in specifically for tonight. He's not going to be happy. Tell him I have a family emergency. Do you? Isabella thought about Emma's too perceptive eyes, about the way she'd asked, "Will you come back?" like it actually mattered whether Isabella said yes or no. Yes, she said, I do. The elementary school gym smelled like floor wax and the particular chaos of children. Isabella arrived 10 minutes early, overdressed in a wool dress and heels, and immediately felt out of place among the sea of parents in jeans and fleece jackets. She spotted Lucas near the front, saving a seat, and something in her chest loosened when he smiled. You came, he said as she sat down. I said I would. I know, but... He gestured at the room. This isn't exactly your usual Tuesday night. No, Isabella admitted. Usually I'm at a steakhouse pretending to care about someone's golf game. While they pitch me investments, I'll probably decline. Sounds amazing. It's not. She accepted the program he handed her. Where's Emma? Backstage, probably having a nervous breakdown. She's been practicing her solo for a week. He paused. She really wanted you here. I'm not sure why, but it seems important to her. Isabella didn't know what to say to that. The lights dimmed before she had to figure it out. The concert was exactly as terrible as Lucas had promised. The second graders did indeed murder Jingle Bells, along with Rudolph and Frosty. But then Emma stepped forward for her solo, a small figure in a red dress, and Isabella found herself holding her breath. Emma sang Silent Night in a voice that was clear and surprisingly strong, and Isabella watched Lucas watching his daughter with an expression of such pure love it hurt to look at. This was what it looked like when someone chose you without conditions. When they stayed not because you were useful, but because you were theirs. After the concert, they waited while Emma collected accolades from other parents. Lucas introduced Isabella to a few people. This is my friend Isabella. And she noticed how he didn't mention her last name, didn't explain what she did. Just friend. Simple. Uncomplicated. Emma finally burst through the crowd, still in her red dress, face flushed with triumph. Did you see? Did you hear me? You were incredible, Lucas said, pulling her into a hug. Emma squirmed away and looked at Isabella. What did you think? Be honest. I think you have a beautiful voice, and I think you were very brave up there. I was really nervous, my hands were shaking, but then I saw you both and I don't know, I felt better. Emma grabbed Isabella's hand, the gesture so casual and trusting it made Isabella's throat tight. Can we get ice cream? Dad always says no because it's a school night, but maybe if you say yes, he'll change his mind. Emma, that's manipulative, Lucas said, but he was smiling. Is it working? Isabella looked at Lucas, at Emma's hopeful face, at the absurdity of her life in this moment. Isabella Laurent, worth $300 million, being manipulated by an 8-year-old into ice cream on a Tuesday night. Yes, she said, it's working. They went to a place called Scoops, which was crowded with other post-concert families and decorated with string lights that gave everything a warm glow. Emma ordered mint chocolate chip and launched into a detailed analysis of which classmate had been off-key and which teacher had cried during the finale. Mrs. Patterson always cries, Emma explained around a mouthful of ice cream. She cried at the fall concert, too, and at Halloween when Joey dressed as a ghost and scared her. Maybe she's very emotional, Isabella suggested, or maybe she just likes crying. Emma considered this seriously. Some people do. My mom used to cry at commercials. The one with the puppy and the toilet paper? She'd cry every time. Lucas's expression flickered, but Emma didn't seem to notice. She'd moved on, asking Isabella if she'd ever been in a school concert, what her favorite subject had been, whether she'd liked her teachers. I was homeschooled, Isabella said. Private tutors, mostly. That sounds lonely. It was. The admission came easier than it should have. But I learned a lot. My father wanted me to be prepared to take over the company, so I studied business and economics and law. Not a lot of music or art. That's sad, Emma announced with characteristic bluntness. Everyone should have music. It makes the sad parts less sad. Isabella looked at this child who'd lost her mother at 6, who'd had to learn grief before multiplication, and felt something crack deeper in her chest. You're very wise for 8. I know. Emma grinned, then turned to Lucas. Can Isabella come to the lake house this weekend? Lucas nearly choked on his coffee. Emma, that's... We haven't even talked about the lake house. Why not? We go every year after Christmas, and it's boring with just us. Isabella could come, and it would be more fun. The lake house is... Lucas looked at Isabella apologetically. My in-laws have a place in New Hampshire. Small, kind of rustic. We usually go for a few days after the holidays. It's really nothing fancy. Please? Emma was looking at Isabella now, ice cream forgotten. You could see the lake, and we could make s'mores, and Dad always needs help with the fireplace because he's bad at it. I'm not bad at it. I'm cautious. You're bad at it. Emma's attention didn't waver from Isabella. Will you come? Please? Isabella should say no. She had board meetings the week after Christmas, year-end reviews to complete, strategic planning sessions. She didn't do spontaneous cabin trips with people she'd known for less than a month. But Emma was looking at her with those eyes, Lucas's eyes on a smaller, more hopeful face, and Isabella found herself nodding before she'd consciously decided. Okay, she said. Yes, I'll come. Emma threw her arms around Isabella's waist, spontaneous and unself-conscious in the way only children could be. And Isabella, who hadn't been hugged like this since she was 7 years old, found herself hugging back. Over Emma's head, she met Lucas's gaze. He looked surprised and grateful, and something else she couldn't name. Something that made her stomach flip. This was dangerous, she thought. This feeling, these people, this wanting something that had nothing to do with profit or power or any of the things that had defined her entire life. But she didn't pull away. They drove Emma home through quiet streets, Christmas lights turning the neighborhood into something from a movie. Isabella followed in her Tesla, watching Lucas's beat-up Subaru ahead of her, thinking about the distance between her world and theirs. Not just money, though that was part of it, but something deeper. A fundamental difference in what they valued, what they chose. Her phone rang. Her father. She almost didn't answer. Isabella, where were you tonight? Morrison called me directly. Said you canceled. I had something come up. Something more important than a $12 million investment? His voice carried that edge she'd learned to recognize as disappointment wrapped in professional concern. This isn't like you. You've been distracted lately. Is this about that architect? His name is Lucas. I don't care what his name is. I care that you're making poor business decisions, canceling important meetings, ignoring calls from board members. I went to a school concert, Dad, a child's winter concert. It lasted 90 minutes. A child you barely know. A child who asked me to be there. Isabella pulled over, unable to drive and have this conversation simultaneously. When's the last time you asked me to be somewhere just because you wanted my company? Not for a board meeting or a merger discussion or a photo op, just because you wanted me there? Silence. Then, that's not fair. Isn't it? I've given you everything, Isabella. Everything I have, everything I've built. The company, the legacy, the resources to be whoever you want to be. And you're throwing it away for some single father and his kid? I'm not throwing anything away. I'm just... She stopped, watching Lucas's taillights ahead. I'm just trying to figure out if there's more to life than quarterly reports. There isn't. Not for people like us. Richard's voice softened, which somehow made it worse. I'm trying to protect you, sweetheart. People like him, they see what you have and they want it. They might not even realize that's what they're doing, but it's there. It's always there. You don't know him. I don't need to. I know how the world works. Papers rustled. Come to dinner Sunday. We'll discuss the Morrison situation and the Henderson merger. We need to present a united front to the board. I can't Sunday. I have plans. Cancel them. No. The word hung between them, heavy with implications. Isabella couldn't remember the last time she'd said no to her father about anything work-related. Isabella? I'll see you Monday morning. We can discuss it then. She ended the call before he could respond, hands shaking slightly. Lucas had pulled over ahead of her, hazards blinking. He got out and walked back to her car, concern clear on his face. You okay? You pulled over kind of suddenly. I'm fine. Just a work call. He studied her through the window, not buying it. You want to talk about it? Not really. Okay. He didn't push, didn't pry, just stood there in the cold, waiting. You still good for this weekend? Emma will be devastated if you bail, but I'd understand if you need to work. Isabella looked at him. This man who'd reorganized his entire life around being present for his daughter, who measured success in bedtime stories and school concerts rather than stock prices. Her father's voice echoed in her head. They see what you have and they want it. But Lucas wasn't looking at her like she was valuable. He was looking at her like she was real. I'm good, she said. I'll be there. His smile made the argument with her father worth it. The rest of the week passed in a blur of meetings and preparations. Isabella tried to focus on work, on the Henderson merger that needed her attention, on Morrison's wounded pride that required smoothing over. But she found herself distracted, thinking about a cabin in New Hampshire, about s'mores and fireplaces, and what it would be like to spend an entire weekend being just Isabella instead of CEO Isabella. Victoria noticed. You're different, she said Thursday afternoon, reviewing schedules in Isabella's office. Different how? I don't know. Lighter, maybe? You smiled at that intern this morning, the new one who spilled coffee in the conference room. The old you would have had security escort him out. I'm not that bad. You absolutely are. Victoria studied her. It's the architect, isn't it, Lucas? Isabella didn't answer, which was answer enough. For what it's worth, Victoria continued, I think it's good. You work too much. You've worked too much since I've known you, and that's been 8 years. Maybe having something outside this, she gestured at the office, the view, the empire. Maybe that's healthy. My father doesn't think so. Your father thinks anything that doesn't directly benefit Laurent Holdings is a waste of time, including sleep, hobbies, and human connection. Victoria's voice was gentle but firm. You're not him, Isabella. You don't have to be. After Victoria left, Isabella stood at her window looking out at the city. She'd built so much of her identity around being Richard Laurent's daughter, around being worthy of the Laurent name and legacy. But standing in that elementary school gym watching Emma sing, sitting in an ice cream shop listening to an 8-year-old's rambling stories, she'd felt more like herself than she had in any boardroom. The question was whether that self was allowed to exist outside of carefully scheduled moments, whether she could build a life that included both the company and something softer, something real. Her phone buzzed. Lucas. Emma wants to know if you're allergic to dogs. Apparently the neighbors have a golden retriever that visits sometimes, and this is crucial information. Not allergic. Why is Emma so concerned with logistics? She gets it from her mother. Claire was a planner, made lists for everything. Emma's the same way. What was she like? Claire. A long pause. Isabella wondered if she'd overstepped. She was kind, funny, terrible at cooking, but kept trying anyway. She loved science fiction and hiking and terrible puns. She made me better, more patient, more willing to see the good in things. Another pause. I still miss her. Every day. But it's different now. Less sharp. More like an ache I've learned to live with. I'm sorry I asked. You don't have to. No, it's okay. It's good, actually. Most people get uncomfortable when I mention her, like they think I can't talk about my dead wife and be interested in someone new at the same time. Isabella's heart stuttered. Is that what this is? Interest? Yeah, I thought that was obvious. I don't invite just anyone to my in-laws' cabin. How many people have you invited? Including you? 1. She read the message 3 times, standing in her empty office, feeling something dangerous and warm unfurl in her chest. I'm interested too, she typed, then deleted it. Too forward, too vulnerable. Looking forward to the weekend, she sent instead. Me too, came the reply. Emma keeps asking if you're real or if she imagined you. What do you tell her? That you're definitely real, and definitely coming, and that she needs to stop reorganizing the guest room because you're going to think we're weird. Too late for that. Yeah, probably. Friday morning, Isabella sat across from her father in the Laurent Holdings executive dining room, picking at a breakfast she didn't want while he outlined his concerns about the Henderson merger. Structural issues with their debt ratios that weren't disclosed in initial due diligence. We need to push the timeline, reassess the valuation. We're not pushing anything, Isabella interrupted. The timeline is fine. The debt is manageable. Richard looked up from his files, surprised. You reviewed the updated numbers? Of course I did. This is my acquisition, Dad. I've been working on it for 6 months. Then you see the risk. I see calculated risk, which is different from recklessness. She set down her fork. We're moving forward. Isabella, unless you're pulling rank as chairman. She met his eyes. Because if you are, let's be clear about it. Are you overriding my decision as CEO? They stared at each other across expensive china and a lifetime of complicated dynamics. Richard Laurent had built this company from nothing, had sacrificed everything for it. But he'd also promised her control, had stepped back to let her lead. He looked away first. No, he said quietly. You're CEO. Final call is yours. Ah, thank you. Isabella stood. I'm leaving early today. Won't be reachable this weekend. Where are you going? New Hampshire. The lake. With the architect. Not a question. With Lucas and his daughter? Yes. Richard's expression shuddered. Be careful, Isabella. People aren't always what they seem. I know, Dad. You've taught me that my entire life. She gathered her things. Maybe that's the problem. She left before he could respond, left before the guilt could catch up with the anger, before she could second-guess herself back into the safe, controlled life she'd always known. Lucas picked her up at 2, Emma bouncing in the back seat of the Subaru like she'd been given pure sugar for lunch. You're really here. I told Mrs. Patterson you were coming and she didn't believe me, and I said you were definitely real and definitely my friend, and Emma, breathe, Lucas said, catching Isabella's eye in the rearview mirror with an apologetic smile. Isabella found herself smiling back. She'd packed light, unusual for her, who normally traveled with 3 suitcase options and a backup outfit plan. Just jeans, sweaters, boots, things that felt right for a cabin in the woods rather than things that photographed well or sent the right message. The drive took 3 hours through progressively smaller towns and increasingly dense forest. Emma narrated the entire journey, pointing out landmarks only she could see and telling elaborate stories about the trees. Lucas drove with one hand, patient with traffic, and Emma's demands to stop at a specific gas station that had the good hot chocolate. Isabella watched them from the passenger seat, watched the easy affection and the practiced routines, and felt herself relaxing in increments. No agenda here, no performance. Just 3 people in a car heading toward a weekend that didn't have to mean anything more than what it was. The cabin appeared as the sun started to set. Small, wood-sided, nestled in pine trees with a lake stretching out behind it. Smoke already curled from the chimney. My in-laws came up this morning to get it ready, Lucas explained, parking. Jim and Carol, they're a lot. But they mean well. Emma was already out of the car, running toward the cabin. An older couple emerged, 60s, warm smiles, the kind of people who looked like they gave good hugs. Lucas! The woman, Carol, pulled him into an embrace, then turned to Isabella. And you must be Isabella. Emma hasn't stopped talking about you for a week. I'm Carol. This is Jim. Welcome, dear. Isabella shook hands, accepted the hug Carol offered, tried to reconcile this warm reception with what she'd expected. These were Claire's parents. They should hate her, or at least resent her, this new woman intruding on their family traditions. Thank you for having me. Anyone Emma wants here is welcome, Jim said, his voice gruff but kind. Plus, we need someone who can beat Lucas at chess. He's gotten cocky. The inside of the cabin was exactly what a lake house should be. Worn furniture, mismatched mugs, a stone fireplace that dominated one wall. Photos covered every surface, and Isabella tried not to stare at the ones of Claire, laughing at a dinner table, holding baby Emma, kissing Lucas under mistletoe. Your room's upstairs, Carol said, leading her up a narrow staircase. It's small, but the view of the lake is lovely in the morning. Buchen. The room was indeed small. A double bed, a dresser, a window that looked out over dark water and darker trees, simple and comfortable and nothing like Isabella's penthouse. Thank you, Isabella said. Really, for letting me crash your family weekend. Carol turned at the door, something knowing in her expression. Emma needs more people in her life who show up. And Lucas, she paused. Lucas has been alone a long time. Even surrounded by people, he's been alone. So if you're here because you want to be, not because you feel obligated, then we're glad to have you. After Carol left, Isabella sat on the bed, looking at the room and trying to understand what she'd walked into. A family, grieving and healing and moving forward. A life so different from hers it might as well exist in another dimension. Her phone had no signal. For the first time in her adult life, she was completely unreachable, and the panic she expected didn't come. Instead, she felt something like relief. Downstairs, Emma was already demanding s'mores. Lucas was arguing with the fireplace, cursing quietly while Jim offered unhelpful suggestions. Carol was in the kitchen doing something that smelled amazing. "Isabella!" Emma spotted her on the stairs. "Come help us. Dad's being incompetent." "I'm not incompetent. The wood is wet." "The wood is fine. You're just bad at this," Emma declared. Isabella found herself laughing, actually laughing, as she joined them. Lucas looked up from the fireplace, soot on his hands and frustration on his face, and something passed between them. Recognition, connection. The beginning of something neither of them had names for yet. "Help," he said simply. "I don't know anything about fireplaces." "Neither does he," Jim said cheerfully. "This should be entertaining." It took them 20 minutes and 3 different strategies, but eventually flames caught and held. Emma cheered like they'd solved world hunger. Carol brought out marshmallows and chocolate and graham crackers, and they settled around the fire like this was normal, like Isabella belonged here. "So," Carol said, poking at her marshmallow, "Isabella, Emma says you run a company?" "I do. Laurent Holdings. We acquire and restructure other businesses." "Sounds intimidating." "It can be." Isabella watched her marshmallow catch fire, pulled it back too late. "But it's what I was raised to do, family business." "Do you enjoy it?" Jim asked, the same question Emma had posed weeks ago. Isabella thought about her father's office, about board meetings and merger negotiations and the weight of expectations. "Sometimes, when I'm solving a problem or helping a struggling company find its footing, but it's also exhausting. There's always another acquisition, another crisis, another performance to maintain." "Sounds lonely," Carol observed quietly. "It is." The admission came easier here, in firelight, with people who didn't need her to be anything except honest. "Most of my relationships are transactional. People want access or connections or funding. They don't want me, they want what I represent." Lucas was watching her across the fire, expression unreadable. "What about friends?" Emma asked. "Don't you have friends?" "I have colleagues, associates, people I network with." "That's not the same thing." "No," Isabella agreed. "It's not." "Well, you have us now," Emma announced with the casual confidence of childhood. "We're your friends. Right, Dad?" Lucas's eyes met Isabella's. "Yeah," he said softly. "Right." They stayed up late, talking and laughing and burning marshmallows. Carol told stories about Claire as a child, about her stubbornness and her kindness and her terrible sense of direction. Jim talked about teaching her to fish on this lake, about father-daughter weekends before Lucas came into the picture. Isabella waited for the jealousy, for the discomfort of being the outsider in someone else's memories. But it never came. Instead, she felt grateful that they were sharing this, that they trusted her enough to include her in the story of who Claire had been. "She would have liked you," Carol said eventually, when Emma had fallen asleep on the couch and the fire had burned low. "Claire, she always said Lucas needed someone who could challenge him, who wouldn't let him hide in routine and safety." "I don't think I'm challenging anyone," Isabella protested. "You're here, aren't you?" Jim smiled. "That's pretty challenging for a CEO who probably has 100 better places to be." After Jim and Carol went to bed, Lucas and Isabella sat in silence, watching the fire die. The cabin creaked around them, settling into night. "Thank you," Lucas said finally, "for coming, for being so good with Emma, with my in-laws. I know this is all probably weird for you." "It's not weird. It's..." Isabella searched for the right word. "It's real. My life isn't real most of the time. It's curated and strategic and carefully managed. But this, sitting here burning marshmallows, listening to stories about your wife, this is the most real I've felt in years." "Claire's death almost destroyed me," Lucas said quietly, still staring at the fire. "For a year after, I just went through motions. Got Emma to school, went to work, kept breathing. Jim and Carol helped a lot, but mostly it was just survival. And then one day Emma asked me if I was ever going to be happy again, and I realized I'd forgotten how. What changed? Time, mostly. And therapy? And Emma herself, she's so full of life, so determined to find joy in everything. She pulled me back. He turned to look at Isabella. But I also decided I couldn't live in fear of losing people. Claire taught me that love is worth the risk, even knowing how badly it can hurt. Isabella's throat tightened. I don't know if I've ever learned that. Then maybe it's time. They sat there in the dying firelight, close enough to touch, but not touching. And Isabella felt the foundation of her carefully controlled life continuing to crack, piece by piece. Morning came cold and bright, light streaming through the cabin windows in a way that made Isabella blink awake slowly, disoriented. For a moment she couldn't remember where she was, the unfamiliar ceiling, the sound of voices downstairs, the smell of coffee, and something baking. Then it came back. The lake house. Lucas and Emma sleeping somewhere in this same building. The conversation by the fire that had lasted until 2 a.m, until her defenses were too tired to stay up. She checked her phone by habit before remembering there was no signal. The relief that washed over her felt dangerous. 3 days unreachable. 3 days where the world would have to function without her constant input. Her father would hate it. The board would panic. Victoria would handle everything because that's what Victoria did. And Isabella would be here, in a cabin in the woods, learning what it felt like to just exist. Downstairs, Emma was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with Carol, and working on what looked like a massive jigsaw puzzle of dolphins. Isabella! Emma's face lit up. You're up! Dad said to let you sleep, but I wanted to wake you at 7 and Grandma said that was rude, but you're up now, so it doesn't matter. Do you like puzzles? I've never really done them. Emma's expression suggested Isabella had just admitted to never breathing before. Never? How is that possible? I was busy with other things, I guess. Well, you're doing one now. Sit. Emma patted the chair next to her with the authority of a tiny dictator. This piece goes in the water section, but I can't find the right spot. Isabella sat, accepted coffee from Carol, and found herself studying puzzle pieces with more focus than she'd brought to most merger negotiations. Emma kept up a running commentary about dolphins, about school, about how her friend Sophie was being weird lately and wouldn't share her crayons. Lucas appeared 20 minutes later, hair wet from a shower, wearing jeans and a flannel shirt that made him look like he belonged in an outdoor catalog. He stopped in the doorway, watching Isabella and Emma bent over the puzzle together, and something in his expression made Isabella's stomach flip. Morning, he said. Morning. Isabella held up a puzzle piece. Apparently, I've been living wrong my entire life by not doing these. They're very serious business, Lucas agreed, pouring coffee. Emma once cried for an hour because we were missing a single piece. It was the dolphin's eye, Dad. The whole thing was ruined. We taped a drawn eye over it, which was not the same. Emma turned to Isabella. Do you want to go to the lake after breakfast? The water's too cold to swim, but we can throw rocks and Dad always tries to skip them, but he's terrible at it. I'm not terrible. You're terrible, Carol confirmed cheerfully. Jim, too. It's genetic. They spent the morning at the lake's edge, breath misting in the cold air. Emma demonstrated proper rock skipping technique with the confidence of someone who'd been doing this for years. Lucas tried and failed repeatedly, each attempt making Emma laugh harder. Here. Isabella picked up a flat stone, tested its weight. Like this? She threw it. The stone skipped once, twice, 3 times before sinking. Emma's jaw dropped. How did you do that? Physics, probably. Weight distribution, angle, velocity. That's cheating. You can't use science. Pretty sure science is how everything works, Emma Bean, Lucas said, trying again and getting 0 skips. They stayed until Emma's nose was red and she was shivering despite her coat. Walking back to the cabin, Emma grabbed both their hands, swinging between them, chattering about hot chocolate and whether they should make cookies. Isabella caught Lucas's eye over Emma's head. He smiled, soft and real, and Isabella felt something in her chest crack wider. This simple moment of walking through trees with a child between them felt more significant than any business deal she'd ever closed. That afternoon, while Emma napped and Carol and Jim drove into town for supplies, Lucas and Isabella sat on the cabin's back porch, wrapped in blankets and watching the lake. Can I ask you something? Lucas said after a long silence. Okay. What are you afraid of? Isabella tensed. What do you mean? You're here, but you're also not quite here. Like part of you is waiting for permission to actually relax. I've watched you this whole trip, with Emma, with my in-laws, with me. You're present but guarded, like you're expecting something bad to happen if you let your guard down completely. Isabella stared at the water, at the way sunlight caught on small waves. The answer was complicated, layered with 30 years of learning to protect herself. I'm afraid, she said finally, that if people see who I really am, not the CEO, not Richard Laurent's daughter, just me, they'll realize I'm not worth the effort. Isabella, no, let me finish. She pulled the blanket tighter. My mother left because I wasn't enough. My father loves me, but only as an extension of his legacy. Every relationship I've had has been conditional. People stay as long as I'm useful, as long as I'm performing correctly. So yes, I'm guarded. Because the alternative is getting comfortable and then having it ripped away when I inevitably fail to meet expectations. Lucas was quiet for a moment. You know that's not how real love works, right? In theory, yes. In practice? She shook her head. I've never experienced anything else. Claire and I had our first real fight 3 months into dating, Lucas said. She wanted to go hiking. I wanted to stay home and watch football. Stupid, right? But it escalated. She said I was lazy. I said she was controlling. We both said things we didn't mean, and I remember thinking, this is it. She's done with me. But she wasn't. She wasn't. She came back the next day, apologized for the controlling comment, and I apologized for being lazy. And then she said something I've never forgotten. She said, love isn't about being perfect for each other. It's about choosing each other even when you're both being idiots. He looked at Isabella. You're waiting for me to see your flaws and leave. But Isabella, I already see them. The guardedness, the need for control, the way you measure everything as risk versus reward. I see all of it, and I'm still here. Isabella's eyes burned. You barely know me. I know you canceled an important meeting to come to Emma's concert. I know you're sitting on this porch freezing your ass off instead of in some fancy hotel because a kid you met a month ago asked you to. I know you're terrified right now, having this conversation, and you're doing it anyway. He shifted closer. That's not nothing. What if I can't do this? The words came out barely above a whisper. What if I'm too damaged, too conditioned to transactional relationships to learn anything else? Then we figure it out together, or we don't, and we both walk away knowing we tried. Lucas's hand found hers under the blanket. But I think you're braver than you give yourself credit for. Before Isabella could respond, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, frowning. She'd left it inside, and there was still no signal out here, except the phone wasn't buzzing. It was a phantom vibration, her brain creating the sensation out of habit. She laughed, bitter and surprised. I just hallucinated a work call. That's concerning. That's my life. She looked at the phone, at the black screen. Even here, unreachable, I'm still waiting for the next crisis. What would happen if you just didn't? If you let Victoria handle it, let the board figure it out, let your father manage for a few days? The company would probably be fine, Isabella admitted, but I'd feel useless. Is that what you think you are? Useful? The question hit harder than it should have. Isabella thought about her father's words, the only thing I have left that matters, and realized he'd been talking about the company as much as her, maybe more. Yeah, she said quietly. That's what I am. That's all I've ever been. Lucas squeezed her hand. You're more than that. Emma sees it. Carol and Jim see it. I see it. What do you see? Someone funny and smart and scared and brave. Someone who burns marshmallows and can't skip rocks and analyzes puzzle pieces like their quarterly reports. Someone who shows up even when it's uncomfortable. He paused. Someone I'm falling for, even though that probably terrifies both of us. Isabella's breath caught. Lucas, you don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know. They sat there as the sun started to set, hands linked under the blanket, and Isabella felt the foundation of her carefully controlled life continuing its slow collapse. Except now, it didn't feel like collapse. It felt like transformation. That night, after Emma was asleep and Jim and Carol had retired to their room, Isabella and Lucas sat by the fire again. The cabin was quiet except for the pop and hiss of burning wood. Tell me about your dad, Lucas said. The real story, not the corporate bio. Isabella considered deflecting, but she was tired of performing. Richard Laurent is brilliant, driven, and emotionally unavailable. He built Laurent Holdings from almost nothing, sacrificed everything for it, including, I think, the ability to connect with people as anything other than assets or liabilities. Does he love you? In his way, yes. But it's love with conditions. Love that requires constant proof of worth. I'm his daughter, but I'm also his legacy, his succession plan, his insurance that everything he built won't disappear when he's gone. She stared into the fire. When I was 10, I placed second in a citywide academic competition, second out of hundreds of kids, and you know what he said? Lucas shook his head. First place would have been better. Not congratulations, not well done, just the acknowledgement that I'd fallen short. Isabella's voice was flat, reciting facts. That's who he is? Someone who loves you for what you achieve, not who you are. That's awful. It's all I know. She looked at Lucas. Claire's parents, Carol and Jim, they love Emma unconditionally. I can see it. They'd love her if she failed every class, if she quit singing, if she decided to become anything other than what they hoped. That kind of love is foreign to me. It doesn't have to be. Before Isabella could respond, her phone, still inside the cabin somewhere, actually rang. The sound was jarring in the quiet wrong somehow. Lucas frowned. I thought there was no signal. There's not. But Isabella stood anyway, following the sound to the kitchen counter where she'd left the phone plugged in. The screen showed her father's name. She stared at it, finger hovering over the decline button. Then something made her answer. Dad? How are you even… Isabella. His voice was wrong, rough, shaken. I need you to come home. What happened? I'm at Mass General. There was an incident, a heart attack, they think. I'm okay, they're running tests, but I need you here. Can you come? The world tilted. Isabella gripped the counter, Lucas appearing at her side with concern on his face. I'm in New Hampshire. It'll take 3 hours. Please. And there it was, the word her father never used. I need you. I'm coming. I'm leaving now. Dad! But he'd already hung up. Isabella stood frozen, phone in hand, reality crashing back in. Her father in a hospital. Her father, who never showed weakness, never asked for help, saying please. What's wrong? Lucas asked. My father. Heart attack. I have to go. Okay, I'll drive you. No, you have Emma, your in-laws. I'll take my car. Isabella, you're shaking. You can't drive 3 hours like this. She looked down at her hands. He was right. They were trembling badly enough that she had to set the phone down before she dropped it. I don't know what to do, she said, and the admission felt like failure. Isabella Laurent always knew what to do. She made decisions worth millions without hesitation. But this, her father in a hospital needing her, had short-circuited something fundamental. You're going to sit down, Lucas said gently, guiding her to the couch. You're going to breathe. And then I'm going to wake up Carol and Jim, explain the situation, and drive you to Boston. Emma will be fine here for the night. I can't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm offering. He was already moving, already making decisions while Isabella's brain refused to function. Carol, he called up the stairs. We have a situation. The next 20 minutes passed in a blur. Carol appearing in her bathrobe, immediately taking charge. Jim promising to handle Emma in the morning, to explain that Isabella had to leave for a family emergency. Lucas throwing things in a bag while Isabella sat on the couch, frozen. She'd built her entire life around control, around never being caught off guard. But her father, invincible, immortal Richard Laurent, in a hospital bed had shattered something she didn't know could break. Ready? Lucas appeared with his jacket and keys. Isabella nodded, not trusting her voice. The drive back was silent for the first hour. Lucas drove with steady focus while Isabella stared out the window at dark trees rushing past. Her mind kept circling the same thoughts. Her father could die. She'd wasted the weekend instead of being there. What if the last real conversation they'd had was an argument about Morrison and mergers and her life choices? He's going to be okay, Lucas said quietly. You don't know that. You're right, I don't. But assuming the worst won't help either of you right now. Isabella's hands clenched in her lap. I should have been there. I should have stayed in Boston, been available. You're a person, not a service. You're allowed to have a life outside of waiting for your father to need you. He's all I have. The words hung in the car, heavy with implication. Lucas reached over, found her hand in the darkness. That's not true anymore, he said. By the time they reached Mass General, it was past midnight. Isabella had called Victoria from the road, her assistant answering on the first ring despite the hour, immediately mobilizing resources. The board had been notified. The PR team was drafting statements. Everything was being handled. But none of that mattered as Isabella walked through the emergency room doors, Lucas a solid presence at her side. A doctor met them, young, competent-looking, with the practiced calm of someone who delivered bad news regularly. Ms. Laurent, I'm Dr. Patel. Your father is stable. The episode was serious, but we got him here in time. He's resting now, but you can see him briefly. What happened? Acute coronary syndrome. The next few days will be critical, but his prognosis is good if he follows our treatment plan. Dr. Patel's expression suggested he had doubts about Richard Laurent following anyone's plan. We'll monitor him closely. Try not to stress him when you see him. Isabella nodded, numb. Lucas squeezed her hand. I'll wait out here, he said. You don't have to. I know, but I'm not leaving. Her father's room was dim, machines beeping softly. Richard Laurent looked smaller somehow, diminished by hospital gowns and IV lines. His eyes were closed, breathing steady, and for a moment Isabella just stood there, staring at this man who'd shaped her entire existence. Dad? His eyes opened, focusing on her with effort. Isabella, you came. Of course I came. She moved to his bedside, careful not to disturb any of the wires. How are you feeling? Like someone kicked me in the chest. The doctors say I need to slow down, reduce stress. He almost smiled. I told them that's not how I'm built. Dad, I'm sorry. The words stopped her cold. Richard Laurent didn't apologize. For calling you away from your weekend. For needing you. I know I've taught you to be independent, to not need anyone. And then here I am, asking you to drop everything. Isabella sat in the chair next to his bed. You're my father. Where else would I be? With the architect, Lucas. He said the name carefully, like testing its weight. You were happy there. I could hear it in your voice when you answered, and I ruined it. You had a heart attack. You didn't ruin anything. They sat in silence, the beeping machines marking time. Isabella thought about all the conversations they'd never had, all the feelings they'd never expressed because emotion was weakness and weakness was unacceptable. When your mother left, Richard said suddenly, I promised myself I'd never let anyone make me that vulnerable again. I threw everything into the company, into building something that couldn't abandon me. And then you came along, and I didn't know how to be both a father and someone who'd locked down that part of himself. Dad, you don't have to. Let me finish, please. He took a breath, wincing. I've loved you the only way I knew how, by making sure you'd never be dependent on anyone, never need anything you couldn't provide for yourself. I thought I was protecting you, but I see now I was just recreating my own damage. Isabella's eyes burned. You did protect me. You gave me everything, education, opportunity, the company, but not warmth, not unconditional acceptance, not the kind of love where you can fail and still be valued. He looked at her, really looked at her, and Isabella saw something she'd never seen before. Regret. The architect, does he love you that way? The question caught her off guard. We haven't, it's new, Dad. But he could. I saw it in the way he looked at you at that gala, the way he stayed by your side tonight without being asked. He sees you, not the company, not the legacy, just you. Richard's hand found hers, grip weak but determined. Don't be like me, Isabella. Don't sacrifice love for safety. It's a hollow trade. Tears spilled over before she could stop them. I'm scared. I know, so am I. He smiled, tired but real. But maybe it's time we both learned to be brave in different ways. They talked until a nurse came in and insisted Richard needed rest. Isabella stood, reluctant to leave but knowing he needed sleep more than her presence. I'll be back in the morning, she promised. Take your time. Enjoy what's left of your weekend. I'm not going anywhere." He paused. "And Isabella? Tell Lucas thank you for driving you here, for being what you need." Walking back to the waiting room, Isabella felt wrung out, emotionally exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical tiredness. Lucas stood when he saw her, concern immediate. "How is he?" "Stable, scared, more honest than I've ever seen him." She walked into Lucas's arms without thinking, just needing the solid warmth of him. "Thank you for being here." "Where else would I be?" he said, echoing her words to her father. They stood like that in the middle of the waiting room, holding each other while fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and somewhere a television played late-night infomercials. It wasn't romantic or beautiful, it was just real. Two people finding comfort in each other during a crisis. "I don't want to go back to my apartment," Isabella said into his shoulder. "It's too empty, too quiet. I'll just think about him here alone." "Then don't. Come home with me." "Lucas, it's 1 a.m. Emma's still at the lake. The apartment is empty. You shouldn't be alone right now." He pulled back enough to look at her. "Unless you want to be alone?" She didn't. For the first time in her life, being alone felt like the wrong choice. They drove to Brookline in silence, exhaustion settling over them both. Lucas's apartment was exactly as Isabella remembered, small, warm, lived in. He gave her a t-shirt and sweatpants to sleep in, made her tea she didn't drink, and sat with her on the couch until her eyes started to close. "I've got the guest room made up," he said, "or you can take my bed and I'll sleep out here." "Stay with me," Isabella heard herself say. "Please, I don't want to be alone." Something shifted in Lucas's expression. "Okay, yeah, of course." His bedroom was simple, a double bed, a dresser covered in Emma's drawings, a bookshelf overflowing with paperbacks and architecture journals. They lay down fully clothed, awkward at first, and then Lucas pulled her against him and Isabella let herself be held. "Thank you," she whispered into the darkness. "For driving me, for waiting, for this. You don't have to keep thanking me. I don't know how else to express it. I'm not good at this, needing people, accepting help. It's not how I was built." "Then learn. I'll be patient." Isabella closed her eyes, feeling the steady rise and fall of his breathing, the warmth of his arms around her. Tomorrow she'd have to deal with the board, with her father's condition, with the company and all the responsibilities she couldn't escape. But right now, in this moment, she let herself have this. Let herself need someone. Let herself be held. She fell asleep thinking about her father's words, "Don't sacrifice love for safety," and wondering if she was brave enough to take that advice. Morning came too soon, gray light filtering through the windows. Isabella woke disoriented, warm, pressed against Lucas's chest. For a moment she didn't move, just lay there listening to his heartbeat, memorizing this feeling. Then reality crashed back. Her father in the hospital, the company without its chairman, a crisis she needed to manage. She shifted and Lucas's arms tightened automatically before he woke. "Hey," he said, voice rough with sleep. "How are you feeling?" "Terrified, grateful, confused." She looked up at him. "Is it possible to feel everything at once?" "Yeah, pretty sure that's just called being human." They lay there for another minute, neither quite ready to face the day. Then Isabella's phone rang. Victoria, probably with updates she didn't want to hear. "I have to take this," she said reluctantly. Lucas nodded, releasing her. "I'll make coffee." The call was exactly what she expected. Her father's condition was all over the news. The stock had dipped 3 points at opening. The board wanted an emergency meeting. Isabella handled it all from Lucas's bedroom, slipping back into CEO mode because that's what the situation required. But when she walked into the kitchen 20 minutes later, Lucas had coffee ready and was making scrambled eggs like this was normal, like having her here was normal. "Eat," he said, sliding a plate across the counter. "Then I'll drive you to the hospital." "You don't have to Isabella." He looked at her, gentle but firm. "Stop telling me what I don't have to do. I know I don't have to. I want to. There's a difference." She sat, accepted the plate, and felt something in her chest crack wider. This casual care, this assumption that of course he'd help, of course he'd stay, was so foreign to her experience it almost hurt. "I'm falling for you too," she said suddenly. "I should have said it yesterday. At the lake. I'm falling for you, and it terrifies me. Lucas sat across from her, coffee in hand, and smiled. Good. If we're both terrified, at least we're terrified together. They ate in comfortable silence, and Isabella thought about Emma's question weeks ago. Are you going to stay? She'd been asking about pancakes, about casual visits, but the question went deeper than that. Was Isabella going to stay? Was she going to choose this messy, complicated, real connection over the safety of her controlled, isolated life? She didn't know yet, but sitting in Lucas's kitchen, eating scrambled eggs while the world fell apart around her, she thought maybe she wanted to find out. At the hospital, her father was awake and arguing with his doctors about discharge timelines. Some things never changed. Isabella. He brightened when she walked in. I told them you'd handle everything at the office. They're concerned I'll try to work from here, which is ridiculous. It's exactly what you'd do, Isabella said, kissing his forehead. How are you feeling? Better, ready to leave. These people are tyrannical about rest. But his color was better, his voice stronger. Did Lucas go home? He's in the waiting room, wanted to give us privacy. Richard nodded slowly. Invite him in. I'd like to thank him properly. Isabella hesitated, then texted Lucas. He appeared a minute later, looking uncomfortable in the hospital setting. Mr. Laurent, he said, glad to see you're looking better. Call me Richard, and thank you for taking care of my daughter last night. I know it disrupted your weekend. Family emergencies don't follow schedules. Lucas glanced at Isabella. I'm just glad I could help. They made awkward small talk for a few minutes, Richard asking about architecture, Lucas deflecting graciously, and Isabella watched her father with this man who'd somehow become important to her and felt the two halves of her life trying to fit together. Isabella, Richard said eventually, there's a board meeting at 1. You should go. I'll be fine here. Dad, I'm serious. They need leadership right now, and that's you. Show them the company is stable despite this setback. I'm not going anywhere. Isabella wanted to argue, but he was right. The board needed reassurance, needed to see a Laurent in control. I'll be back tonight, she promised. In the elevator, Lucas asked quietly, Are you okay? I don't know. Ask me when I'm not running on 3 hours of sleep and pure adrenaline. He pulled her close, kissed the top of her head. You've got this. But call me if you need anything, okay? Okay. The board meeting was brutal. 3 hours of damage control, reassurances, strategic planning for leadership transition if Richard's recovery took longer than expected. Isabella fielded questions with the same precision she brought to hostile negotiations, never letting them see how exhausted she was, how terrified. By the time it ended, she had a splitting headache and 7 new problems to solve. But the company was stable. The stock had recovered. They'd weathered the storm. She was walking to her car when Emma called. Isabella, Dad gave me his phone to call you. Are you okay? Grandma said your dad got sick and you had to leave and I was worried. Isabella's eyes burned. I'm okay, Emma. My dad is going to be fine. I'm sorry I left without saying goodbye. It's okay. Emergencies are emergencies. That's what Grandma said. A pause. When are you coming back for pancakes? Soon, I promise. Do you promise? Because that's different from regular promise. I promise. Okay. I'll hold you to it. Also, Dad's been weird all day, like he's worried but pretending he's not. Can you text him or something? Isabella smiled despite everything. I will. That night, back at her father's bedside, Richard was finally ready to talk about real things. I've been thinking, he said, about the company, about succession. Dad, this isn't the time. It's exactly the time. I could have died today, and if I had, you'd have inherited everything without us ever having discussed what you actually want. Isabella froze. What I want? Do you want Laurent Holdings? Really want it? Or is it just what you've always assumed you'd do because it's what I expected? The question Isabella had been avoiding her entire adult life, spoken plainly in a hospital room at 11 at night. I don't know, she admitted. I've never let myself ask that question. Then ask it now, because life is too short, Isabella. Too short to build your whole existence around someone else's expectations. Even mine. They talked until visiting hours ended and the nurses forced her to leave. Talked about the company, about legacy, about what it meant to honor someone's sacrifice without sacrificing yourself in the process. Walking out of the hospital, Isabella felt lighter somehow. Scared, uncertain, but lighter. Lucas was waiting in her apartment when she got home. She'd given him a key that afternoon, a gesture that felt more significant than it probably should have. "Hey," he said from her couch. "I hope this is okay. Emma wanted to make sure you ate dinner, so I brought Chinese food, which is probably cold now, but—" Isabella kissed him. She'd meant it to be quick, a thank you, but it turned into something else. Relief and fear and gratitude all tangled together, pouring into this one connection. When they finally pulled apart, Lucas rested his forehead against hers. "Not that I'm complaining," he said, "but what was that for?" "For staying. For caring. For asking me to call if I needed anything and then showing up even though I didn't." She took a breath. "For making me feel like I matter for reasons that have nothing to do with quarterly earnings." "You do matter. You matter so much, Isabella." They ate cold Chinese food on her couch, and Isabella told him about her father's question, about the uncertainty she'd been carrying for years. Lucas listened without trying to fix it, without offering solutions, just being present while she worked through it out loud. "What do you think you'll do?" he asked eventually. "I don't know. The company is my father's legacy. Walking away feels like betrayal. Or maybe it's honoring what he actually wants, which is for you to be happy. Maybe that's the real legacy." Isabella thought about Emma at the lake house, about Carol and Jim's unconditional love, about Lucas leaving a gala early for bedtime stories, thought about all the ways people built lives that mattered without million-dollar mergers or corporate empires. "I'm scared," she said. "I know, but maybe that means you're heading in the right direction." They fell asleep on the couch, tangled together, and for the first time in weeks, Isabella slept dreamlessly, peacefully, held by someone who chose her without conditions. The next 3 weeks passed in a strange duality. Days belonged to the company, Isabella managing operations while her father recovered, fielding board concerns, keeping Laurent Holdings stable through the uncertainty. Nights belonged to Lucas and Emma, dinners at the Brookline apartment, homework help, the comfortable chaos of a life she was learning to navigate. She was living in two worlds, and the distance between them was getting harder to ignore. Richard came home from the hospital on a Tuesday, chastened but restless. Isabella had arranged for a private nurse, for meal services, for everything he might need. But what he seemed to need most was to argue with his doctors about their restrictions. 6 weeks of reduced activity, he complained from his study, where he'd immediately set up shop despite explicit orders not to work. "I'll lose my mind in 6 weeks. "Oh, you'll lose more than that if you have another heart attack," Isabella said, confiscating his laptop. "The board is handling things. I'm handling things. You need to rest. I've spent 40 years building this company. Resting feels like dying." Isabella understood that more than she wanted to admit. Work had always been her identity, her worth, her proof of existence. The idea of stepping back, of trusting others, of accepting that she wasn't indispensable, it terrified her too. "Maybe," she said carefully, "that's the problem. Maybe we've both tied too much of ourselves to this place." Richard looked at her, really looked at her, and something in his expression softened. "You're different, since the lake, since Lucas." "Different how?" "Lighter, like you're carrying less weight, or maybe just distributing it better." He paused. "Are you happy, Isabella? Actually happy?" The question caught her off guard. "I don't know if I know what that means." Then figure it out while you still can." He leaned back in his chair, looking older than he had before the hospital. "I wasted too many years chasing the next acquisition, the next triumph, thinking happiness would come from success. It doesn't. It comes from the people you choose and who choose you back." That night, Lucas cooked dinner at her place. A first, since they usually defaulted to his apartment where Emma's presence made everything feel less intense. But Emma was at a sleepover, and Lucas had shown up with groceries and a determination to use Isabella's kitchen that had probably never seen actual cooking. "This is very domestic," Isabella observed, watching him chop vegetables with more enthusiasm than skill. "Is that a problem?" "No, it's just new." She leaned against the counter, wineglass in hand. "I've never had someone cook for me in my own home before." "What about boyfriends? Past relationships?" Isabella laughed, bitter. Past relationships involved a lot of restaurant reservations and hotel rooms, not a lot of grocery shopping and home cooking. Lucas set down the knife, turning to face her fully. Can I ask you something? And you can tell me it's none of my business. Okay. How many of those relationships were real? Like actually real, not just convenient or expected? She wanted to deflect, to change the subject, but his eyes were patient and genuine, and she was tired of performing. None of them, she admitted. They were all transactions. I dated men who enhanced my professional image or who my father approved of or who understood that the company came first. And they dated me for similar reasons: access, connections, status. We used each other politely and called it romance. That sounds lonely. It was. It is. She set down her wine. What we're doing, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be with someone who actually sees me and doesn't have an agenda. Lucas moved closer, close enough that she could smell the faint scent of his cologne mixed with garlic from the vegetables. It's not that complicated. You just show up. Be honest. Let me see you, even the parts you think are broken or wrong or not good enough. That's it. That's terrifying. Yeah, it is, he smiled. But you're doing it anyway. That counts for something. They ate dinner at her dining table, a piece of furniture she'd owned for 3 years and used maybe twice. Lucas talked about a project at work, about Sharon's impossible demands and Jim's mediocre advice. Isabella talked about the board meeting from hell, about her father's stubbornness, about feeling caught between duty and desire. It felt normal. Astonishingly, dangerously normal. After dinner, they ended up on her couch, and the kissing that started soft turned urgent. Isabella pulled back before it could go further, breathing hard. Wait, she said. Lucas immediately stopped, concern replacing want. Too fast? No, yes, I don't know. She pressed her hands to her face. I'm sorry. I want this. I want you, but I'm scared of what it means, of what happens when this becomes real and unavoidable. Isabella, it's already real. I know, that's the problem. She stood, pacing. In 3 weeks, you've become the person I call when something goes wrong. Emma's become the kid I think about when I'm in boring meetings. Your apartment feels more like home than this place. And that terrifies me because I don't know how to need people without losing myself. Lucas watched her pace, not interrupting, just listening. My whole life, she continued, I've been in control. Of my education, my career, my relationships, everything calculated, everything managed. And then you showed up, leaving a gala early for bedtime stories, and suddenly nothing is calculated anymore. I'm making decisions based on what I want instead of what makes strategic sense, and I don't know who I am when I do that. You're just you, Lucas said quietly, without the armor, without the performance, just Isabella. What if that's not enough? For who? Your father? The board? Because I can promise you, Emma and I aren't measuring your worth by your quarterly reports. Isabella stopped pacing, standing in the middle of her pristine living room, and felt the weight of his words settle over her. I don't know how to believe that. Then let me keep showing you until you do. The moment hung between them, fragile and huge. Isabella wanted to step forward, to let herself have this, but the fear was paralyzing. Fear of losing control, of being vulnerable, of discovering that she still wasn't enough even when someone claimed to love her without conditions. Her phone rang. Victoria. I have to take this, Isabella said, grateful for the interruption and hating herself for the gratitude. It was a crisis, minor but urgent. A key investor threatening to pull out, spooked by Richard's health scare. Isabella shifted into CEO mode automatically, promising Victoria she'd handle it, already mentally drafting talking points and reassurances. When she hung up, Lucas was putting on his jacket. You're leaving. You need to work, and I should get home anyway, check on Emma's sleepover pickup time. He kissed her forehead, gentle and understanding. We're okay, Isabella. This conversation isn't over, but we're okay. After he left, Isabella stood in her empty apartment and felt the silence press in. She could call him back, could choose him over the investor crisis that Victoria could probably handle alone. But she didn't. She grabbed her laptop and spent the next 3 hours crafting the perfect email, making calls, doing what she'd always done. Choosing work because it was safer than choosing love. The pattern continued. Days of navigating her father's recovery and company politics, nights with Lucas and Emma that felt like glimpses of an alternate life. But the two worlds weren't integrating, they were colliding. It came to a head 2 weeks later at a company gala. Black tie, major donors, the kind of event where Isabella's presence was mandatory and her +1 would be scrutinized. She'd invited Lucas without thinking it through, and now watching him navigate the room in a rented tux, she saw how out of place he looked. Not because he didn't clean up well, he did, devastatingly so, but because he didn't belong to this world of calculated charm and strategic small talk. He was genuine in a room full of performance, and it showed. "Your boyfriend seems nice," Marcus Chen said, appearing at her elbow with his usual impeccable timing. "Little out of his depth, though, isn't he?" Isabella's jaw clenched. "Lucas is doing fine." "I'm sure he is. But Isabella, people are talking about the optics. Billionaire CEO, dating a middle-class single father. It's a great story for the tabloids, less great for the company image." "Since when do I care about tabloids?" "Since your father had a heart attack and the board is looking for any excuse to question your stability." Marcus sipped his champagne. "I'm not trying to be cruel. I'm trying to be realistic. Is this relationship worth the complications it's creating?" Before Isabella could respond, Lucas appeared with 2 champagne flutes, offering her one with a smile that died when he saw her expression. "Everything okay?" "Fine," she said too quickly. "Marcus was just leaving." Marcus nodded, slipping away into the crowd. Lucas watched him go, then turned to Isabella. "What did he say?" "Nothing important." "Isabella?" "He's concerned about optics, about how we look together." She took a long drink of champagne. "He's not wrong. This world," she gestured at the ballroom, "it's not yours. And I'm realizing how hard it's going to be to fit you into it." Lucas's expression shuddered. "Are you saying I'm an embarrassment?" "No, that's not—" She stopped, frustrated. "I'm saying I don't know how to do this. How to have a relationship with someone who doesn't understand board politics or investor relations, or why I sometimes have to cancel plans for work emergencies. This is my life, Lucas. The galas, the meetings, the constant performance. And I don't know if there's room for anything else." "Anything else?" Lucas repeated flatly. "You mean me and Emma?" "I didn't say that." "You didn't have to." He set down his champagne. "I should go." "Lucas, wait." But he was already moving toward the exit, and Isabella stood frozen in the middle of the ballroom, watching him leave and unable to make herself follow. She stayed at the gala another hour, smiling and networking and pretending her chest wasn't tight with regret. When she finally got home, there were no messages from Lucas, no texts asking if they could talk. Just silence. She'd pushed him away, exactly like she'd been afraid of doing, exactly like she'd promised herself she wouldn't. The next morning, Emma called. "Why did you make my dad sad?" No preamble, no greeting, just accusation. Isabella's throat tightened. "Emma, he came home last night and he was doing that thing where he pretends everything's fine, but it's not fine. Like after Mom died, when he'd smile but his eyes were wrong." Emma's voice was fierce. "What happened?" "We had a disagreement about whether we fit together." "That's stupid. Of course you fit together. You like the same things and you make him smile real smiles and he makes you less sad. What else matters?" "It's more complicated than that, sweetheart." "Why? Why does it have to be complicated? Either you want to be with him or you don't. Either we're worth it or we're not." A pause. And when Emma spoke again, her voice was smaller. "Are we not worth it?" The question gutted Isabella. "Emma, you and your dad are worth everything. That's not the problem." "Then what is?" "I'm scared. I'm scared of wanting something this much and losing it. I'm scared of not being enough for you both. I'm scared of choosing you and having it be the wrong choice. My mom used to say the right choices are always scary, because if they weren't scary, they wouldn't matter enough to be right." Emma sniffled. "Are you going to give up on us? Because Dad won't fight for himself. He'll just let you go if he thinks that's what you want. But I don't think it is what you want." "I don't know what I want, Emma." "Yes, you do. You're just scared to say it." And then, devastating in its simplicity, "I thought you were braver than this." Emma hung up, and Isabella sat in her empty apartment feeling like the worst person alive. An 8-year-old had seen right through her, had called out her cowardice with the brutal honesty of childhood. She was scared. Terrified, actually. But Emma was right. She knew what she wanted. She wanted Sunday pancakes and school concerts and Lucas's steady presence. She wanted Emma's questions and Carol and Jim's warmth and a life that felt real instead of performed. But wanting it and being brave enough to choose it were different things. Her father called later that afternoon. "I heard about the gala," he said. "Marcus mentioned there was some tension. Marcus needs to mind his own business. Isabella, I'm not calling to lecture. I'm calling because I've been where you are, standing at the crossroads of what you're supposed to want and what you actually want. And I chose wrong." His voice was heavy with regret. "I chose the company, the image, the safe path. And I lost your mother because of it." Isabella froze. "What?" "Your mother didn't just leave. I pushed her away. She wanted me to slow down, to prioritize family, to build a life that wasn't consumed by work. And I told her that was impossible, that she knew who I was when she married me. So she left, because staying meant accepting that she and you would always be secondary." "Dad, you never said—" "I was ashamed. Easier to let you think she abandoned us than to admit I drove her away." He took a shaky breath. "Don't make my mistakes, Isabella. Don't sacrifice love for safety. The company will survive without you. Hell, it might even thrive. But Lucas and Emma, they won't wait forever. And you'll spend the rest of your life wondering what you missed." After he hung up, Isabella sat staring at her phone, her entire understanding of her childhood recontextualized. Her mother hadn't left because Isabella wasn't enough. She'd left because Richard had forced an impossible choice, and she'd chosen herself. Isabella was doing the same thing, forcing Lucas to fit into her world instead of building something new together, treating their relationship as a complication to manage instead of a gift to protect. She was her father's daughter in all the worst ways. That night, she went to Lucas's apartment. Emma answered the door, took one look at her, and yelled, "Dad! Isabella's here and she looks sad." Lucas appeared, wary but concerned. "Isabella? What's wrong?" "Can we talk, please?" He hesitated, then nodded, sending Emma to her room despite her protests. They sat on the couch where they'd shared so many dinners, so many conversations, and Isabella tried to find the right words. "I'm sorry," she started, "for what I said at the gala, for making you feel like you don't fit in my life, for being scared and taking it out on you." "Isabella, let me finish, please." She took a breath. "I've spent my whole life protecting myself, building walls, maintaining control, never letting anyone close enough to hurt me. And then you showed up and you saw through all of it. You saw me, the real me, and you didn't run. And that terrified me more than anything I've ever faced in a boardroom." Lucas's expression softened slightly. "I'm not trying to change you or fix you. I just want to be with you." "I know, but that's the problem. I don't know how to be with someone without losing myself, without becoming what they need me to be. And I'm scared that if I choose you, I'll stop being Isabella Laurent and just become Lucas's girlfriend, Emma's pseudo-stepmom. And I've worked too hard to build my identity to just surrender it." "Is that what you think would happen?" Lucas leaned forward. "Isabella, I fell for you because you're brilliant and driven and ambitious. I don't want you to stop being those things. I just want you to also be happy, to also have a life outside the office, to also let yourself need people. But what if I cannot balance it? What if I'm too damaged, too conditioned to choose work over everything else?" "Then we figure it out, together. That's what relationships are. Two people learning to navigate life as a team instead of alone." He reached for her hand. "But I can't do this if you're always going to pull away when things get hard. If I'm always going to be the thing you sacrifice when the company demands more from you." Isabella felt tears threatening. "I don't know if I can promise I won't do that. The company is in my blood. It's all I've ever known. I'm not asking you to choose between the company and me. I'm asking you to choose yourself, to figure out what you actually want instead of what you think you're supposed to want." Lucas squeezed her hand. "What do you want, Isabella? Not what your father wants, not what the board wants. What do you want?" The question her father had asked in the hospital, the question she'd been avoiding her entire life. "I want you," she whispered. "I want Emma. I want Sunday pancakes and school concerts and s'mores at the lake. I want to come home to someone who cares if I had a bad day. I want to matter to people for reasons that have nothing to do with profit margins." The tears spilled over. "But I'm so scared, Lucas. I'm scared of wanting this much and having it ripped away. I'm scared of not being enough. I'm scared of choosing wrong. Hey, Lucas pulled her close, and she let herself collapse against him. You're not choosing wrong. You're choosing love. And yeah, it's scary. Love always is. But it's also worth it. What if I mess this up? What if I hurt you, hurt Emma? You probably will sometimes. And we'll probably hurt you sometimes. That's part of being human. He kissed the top of her head. But we'll work through it. That's what people who love each other do. They sat like that, Isabella crying into his shoulder while he held her, until Emma appeared in the hallway. Are you guys okay? She asked, worry clear in her voice. Lucas looked at Isabella, a question in his eyes. Isabella wiped her face and nodded. Come here, Emma Bean, Lucas said. Emma climbed onto the couch between them, looking back and forth at their faces. Did you make up? Working on it, Isabella said, finding her voice. Emma, I'm sorry for making your dad sad, and for scaring you. I'm learning how to do this, how to be with people without being scared all the time. Are you still scared now? Terrified. Emma considered this, then hugged Isabella fiercely. That's okay. Dad says being scared just means you care a lot. And caring a lot is good, even when it's scary. Over Emma's head, Isabella met Lucas's eyes. He smiled, tentative but real, and something in Isabella's chest unlocked. This was what choosing looked like. Not perfect, not easy, but real. The next few weeks were still hard. Isabella struggled to balance work demands with being present for Lucas and Emma. She missed a dinner because of a board emergency, snapped at Lucas over something minor because she was stressed about a merger. She wasn't magically fixed, wasn't suddenly good at vulnerability or trust, but she was trying. And when she messed up, she apologized instead of running. When she felt the urge to retreat into work, she told Lucas instead of just disappearing. When Emma asked if she was staying, Isabella said yes, even though the commitment terrified her. Sharon noticed the change. You're different, she said one afternoon, cornering Lucas at the office. Distracted, missing deadlines. This is about that woman, isn't it? The CEO. Lucas looked up from his designs. Her name is Isabella, and yes, it's about her. Lucas, you're jeopardizing your career for a relationship that's probably temporary. Women like that, they don't end up with men like us. The novelty wears off and they move on to someone more suitable. Or, Lucas said carefully, maybe you're projecting your own issues onto my relationship. Isabella and I are doing fine. For now. Until she realizes how much easier her life would be with someone from her own world. Someone who understands board meetings and galas and all the other bullshit that comes with that much money. Lucas stood, gathering his things. I appreciate your concern, Sharon, but I'm choosing to trust the person I love instead of assuming the worst. Maybe you should try that sometime. He left before she could respond, but her words echoed in his mind. Was he fooling himself? Was he setting himself and Emma up for heartbreak when Isabella inevitably chose her real life over their borrowed moments? That night, he almost didn't tell Isabella about the conversation, but she asked about his day, and he'd promised honesty even when it was uncomfortable. Sharon thinks you're going to leave me, he said, once the novelty wears off. Once you realize how much simpler your life would be with someone from your own world. Isabella set down her fork. They were at her place, having dinner, another small step toward integration. What do you think? I think Sharon's bitter and jaded and sees the worst in everything. He paused. But I also think she has a point. Your life is complicated, Isabella. The company, your father, the constant demands on your time and attention, and I'm an architect from Brookline with a kid and a 15-year-old car. I don't enhance your image or open professional doors. I'm just me. Just you, Isabella repeated. Lucas, do you know what I had before you? A penthouse that felt like a mausoleum. Colleagues who wanted access to my money or connections. A father who loved me as a business asset. And loneliness so profound I'd forgotten what genuine laughter sounded like. She reached across the table for his hand. You didn't make my life simpler. You made it messier and more complicated, and infinitely better. And yes, Sharon's right that you don't enhance my professional image. You enhance my actual life, which matters a hell of a lot more. You say that now. I say that now, and I'll say it tomorrow, and next month, and next year, if you let me. Her grip tightened. I'm choosing you, Lucas. Not because it's easy or convenient or what people expect, because you make me want to be braver. Because Emma makes me laugh. Because this, she gestured between them, this is the first real thing I've ever had, and I'm not letting it go without a fight. Lucas felt something loosen in his chest. I'm choosing you too. Even though you work too much and can't skip rocks and sometimes prioritize board meetings over dinner. I'm working on that. I know, and I'm working on trusting that you're not going to wake up one day and realize you've made a terrible mistake. We're both works in progress, Isabella said, but maybe that's okay. Maybe we just figure it out as we go. Emma wandered in from Isabella's guest room, where she'd been watching a movie. Are you guys being weird and emotional again? Probably, Lucas admitted. Good. You're better when you're honest about your feelings. Emma grabbed a cookie from the plate on the counter. Mrs. Patterson says emotional honesty is the foundation of healthy relationships. Also, she thinks you should get married, but I told her that was premature. Isabella nearly choked on her wine. You discussed our relationship with your teacher? She asked if you were coming to the spring concert. I said yes. She said you must be serious about Dad. I said probably. Then we talked about healthy relationship dynamics. Emma shrugged. She's very into psychology. After Emma went back to her movie, Lucas and Isabella looked at each other and started laughing. Your daughter is terrifying, Isabella said. I know, sorry about the marriage comment. She's been on this kick lately about family structure, and it's okay. Isabella surprised herself with the words. It's actually kind of sweet that she's thinking about it. Yeah? Lucas's voice was careful. Yeah. Isabella stood, moving around the table to sit in his lap, something she never would have done a month ago. I'm not ready for marriage. I'm barely ready for committed relationship. But the fact that Emma sees a future where we're all together, that doesn't scare me as much as it probably should. Lucas wrapped his arms around her waist. For the record, I'm not ready for marriage either, but I'm ready for this. For us. For figuring out what comes next together. Together, Isabella echoed, testing the word. I like the sound of that. They kissed, slow and sweet, and Emma yelled from the other room, I can hear you being gross. Keep it PG. They broke apart laughing, and Isabella thought about how far she'd come from that gala, where she'd first seen Lucas leave early for bedtime stories. How she'd built a life around control and performance, and how he'd helped her start building something real instead. It wasn't perfect. It was messy, and complicated, and sometimes scary. But it was hers. Theirs. And for the first time in her life, that felt like enough. The breakthrough came on a Tuesday, which felt appropriately unromantic for something that would change everything. Isabella was in her office, 3 weeks after the conversation about marriage and healthy relationship dynamics, staring at a contract that should have been simple to sign. A merger acquisition, 18 months of negotiations, everything she'd worked toward for Laurent Holdings' expansion into the European market. Her signature was the final piece, but her hand wouldn't move. Victoria knocked and entered without waiting, which meant something was wrong. Your father's here. He says it's urgent. Richard appeared behind her, looking healthier than he had since the heart attack, but carrying a folder that Isabella recognized immediately. The succession documents they'd been avoiding for months. We need to talk, he said. Victoria retreated, closing the door. Richard sat across from Isabella's desk, the same power dynamic they'd maintained her entire professional life, and set the folder between them. I've been thinking about what happens next. For the company. For you. Dad, the doctor said, I'm not dying, not today anyway, but the heart attack was a warning I can't ignore. He opened the folder. I've made a decision, and I need you to hear me out before you argue. Isabella set down her pen, giving him full attention. I'm stepping down as chairman, effective immediately. The board will vote on my replacement next week, but I'm recommending Marcus Chen. Marcus, Dad, he's what? Conservative and cautious, and exactly what the company needs during a transition period. He'll steady the ship while you decide what you actually want to do. Isabella's stomach dropped. What I want to do? You're 30 years old. You've spent your entire life preparing to run this company because I expected it, because it was the plan, because you were too young to know there were other options. Richard's voice was gentle but firm. But I've watched you these past few months with Lucas and Emma, and I've seen something I've never seen before. You're happy. Actually, genuinely happy. And I realized I've been asking you to sacrifice that for a legacy that might not even be yours to carry. The company is my responsibility. The company will survive without you. It might even thrive with someone who actually wants to be here, who isn't doing it out of obligation or fear of disappointing their father. He pushed the folder toward her. These are two different versions of your future. Option 1, you stay on as CEO, take on more responsibility, and build on everything I've created. Option 2, you step back, pursue something else, and let someone who's genuinely passionate about this work take the helm. Isabella stared at the documents like they might explode. You're firing me? I'm setting you free. There's a difference. Richard's expression softened. I love you, Isabella. Not because of what you've accomplished or what you can do for the company. I love you because you're my daughter, and I've done a terrible job of showing that, but I'm trying to do better. And part of that means not forcing you into a life you never chose. I did choose it. Did you? Or did you just accept it because you thought you had to? He stood, preparing to leave. Think about it. Really think about what you want your life to look like, not what I want, not what the board expects, what you want, and then make a choice from there. After he left, Isabella sat in her corner office, surrounded by everything she'd worked for, and felt the foundations crack completely. She called Lucas. Hey, he answered, slightly out of breath. Sorry, I'm at Emma's soccer game. What's up? Can I see you tonight? After Emma's asleep? Yeah, of course. You okay? I don't know. Ask me later. She heard Emma shouting in the background, heard Lucas cheering for whatever play she'd just made, and felt her chest constrict with wanting. This was what normal looked like. Soccer games and family time and lives that weren't consumed by corporate strategy. Isabella? Lucas's voice pulled her back. I'm here if you need me. Whatever this is, we'll figure it out. I know. And she did know, which was its own revelation. I'll see you tonight. The rest of the day dragged. Isabella went through the motions, conference calls, emails, the endless minutiae of running a company worth billions. But her mind was elsewhere, turning over her father's words, examining the two versions of her future he'd laid out. Stay or go. Continue or start over. Safety or risk. At 7, she left the office for the first time before dark in months. Victoria's expression was comical. Are you feeling okay? I'm figuring some things out, Isabella said. I'll need you to clear my schedule for tomorrow, the whole day. The whole day? Isabella, you have the Henderson merger final review. Reschedule it. Or better yet, have Marcus handle it. He's going to be chairman soon. Might as well start earning it. She left before Victoria could ask the questions clearly forming, drove to Brookline, and let herself into Lucas's apartment with the key he'd given her last month. Emma was already asleep, her room door cracked open and a dolphin nightlight casting blue shadows. Lucas was in the kitchen, cleaning up dinner dishes. He turned when she entered, took one look at her face, and dried his hands. Okay, talk to me. So she did. She told him about her father's visit, about the choice she was being offered, about the terror of walking away from everything she'd built and the equal terror of staying. She told him about sitting in her office, unable to sign a contract that should have been the culmination of her career, because all she could think about was whether this was really what she wanted. Lucas listened without interrupting, the way he always did, and when she finally ran out of words, he asked the same question her father had. What do you want, Isabella? I want both. I want the company and I want this. I want to be successful and respected and also come home to you and Emma. I want to prove I'm worthy of the Laurent legacy and also just be a person who makes pancakes on Sunday mornings. She pressed her palms to her eyes. But I don't think I can have both. Not really. Not without one of them suffering. So you have to choose. I don't know how. I've never made a choice based on what I want instead of what I should do. I don't even know what wanting feels like separate from obligation. Lucas moved closer, taking her hands. Then let's try something. Close your eyes. Lucas, humor me. Close your eyes. Isabella did, feeling ridiculous. Now imagine it's 5 years from now. You stayed with the company. You're chairman or CEO or whatever title means you've achieved everything your father built toward. Walk me through a typical day. Isabella let herself sink into the vision. I wake up alone, probably around 5. I work out, check emails over breakfast. I'm at the office by 7. Meetings all day, board meetings, investor calls, strategic planning sessions. Maybe lunch with a potential acquisition target. More meetings in the afternoon. I work until 8 or 9, go home to my empty penthouse, review documents over dinner, sleep, repeat. Okay, now same question, but you've walked away. What does that day look like? This vision was harder, unfamiliar. I wake up next to you. Emma bursts in because she heard us talking and wants to know what's for breakfast. We argue about whether pancakes count as a weekday meal. I drop her at school, maybe kiss you goodbye. She paused, uncertain. I don't know. I work on something, but I'm not sure what. Something that matters, but doesn't consume me. I'm home when Emma gets back from school. We do homework together. You cook dinner badly, and I pretend not to notice. We watch Emma's latest obsession on TV. We put her to bed together. And then we have time, actual time, to just be together, to talk about our days, to be present with each other. Which version makes you happier? Isabella opened her eyes, and they were wet. The second one. But that's not how decisions work. I can't just choose happiness over responsibility. Why not? Because people depend on me. The company, the employees, my father's legacy will all survive without you. Maybe even thrive. Lucas cupped her face. Isabella, I'm not trying to convince you to quit. If the company is genuinely what you want, if that life fulfills you, then you should stay. But if you're only staying out of obligation, out of fear of disappointing people or proving your worth, that's not a good enough reason to sacrifice your actual happiness. What if I regret it? What if I walk away and realize I made a terrible mistake? Then you course correct. You go back, or you try something else, or you figure it out as you go. That's what life is. A series of choices and adjustments, not one perfect decision that determines everything. Isabella thought about her mother, who'd made the choice to leave rather than shrink herself to fit Richard's expectations. Thought about Claire, who Lucas said had taught him that love was worth the risk. Thought about Emma, who chose joy and curiosity and honesty even when it was uncomfortable. All the brave women in her orbit, choosing themselves, choosing love, choosing life over legacy. I'm terrified, she whispered. I know, but you're also brave. You've always been brave, Isabella. You just directed that bravery toward building empires instead of building a life. Lucas kissed her forehead. What if you directed it somewhere else for a while? See what happens? They stood in his kitchen, holding each other while the refrigerator hummed and somewhere a neighbor's TV played too loud. It wasn't romantic or cinematic. It was just real. Two people trying to figure out how to build something together. I need to think, Isabella said finally. Really think, without work emergencies or board meetings or my father's expectations clouding everything. Okay, take whatever time you need. But she didn't need more time. She'd been thinking about this, circling around it for months. Ever since Lucas left that gala early for bedtime stories. Ever since Emma asked if she was sad a lot. Ever since her father's heart attack had forced her to confront what actually mattered. She knew what she wanted. She'd known for weeks. She was just scared to choose it. The next morning, Isabella walked into her father's hospital room. He was back for a follow-up, routine monitoring, and found him reviewing financial reports despite strict orders to rest. Dad, he looked up, guilty. I'm just reading. The doctor said, I'm stepping down. Richard set down the report slowly. You've decided then. I'm staying on through the transition. 6 months, maybe less if we can find the right replacement. I'll help with the Henderson merger since I've been leading it, but yes, I'm stepping down. Isabella sat in the chair next to his bed. I don't want to be you, Dad. I don't want to wake up at 60 having sacrificed every relationship, every moment of genuine joy for a company that will outlive me anyway. I want more than that. What will you do? I don't know yet. Maybe consulting, helping smaller companies with sustainable growth. Maybe teaching business ethics. Wouldn't that be ironic? Maybe something completely different. She smiled, and it felt real. But whatever it is, it'll be my choice. Not obligation, not expectation. Mine. Richard was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was thick. I'm proud of you. Not for what you've accomplished, though that's significant, but for being brave enough to choose differently than I did, for being better than I was. You're getting better too, asking me to choose instead of just assuming I'd sacrifice everything. Your mother would be proud too, I think. She always wanted you to have choices she didn't feel she had. They sat in comfortable silence, and Isabella felt something shift between them. Not fixed, not perfect, but healing, better than it had been. Will you still come to Sunday dinners? Richard asked. Once a month, maybe? I'd like to know you, Isabella. The real you, not just the executive version. I'd like that. Telling the board was harder. Marcus was thrilled, already positioning himself for the chairmanship. Victoria cried, which Isabella hadn't expected, and then immediately started updating her resume because, if you're leaving, I'm definitely leaving. The other board members ranged from shocked to relieved to concerned about stock prices and investor confidence. Isabella handled it all with the same precision she'd brought to acquisitions, managing the transition, soothing concerns, making sure the company would be stable without her. It took 3 weeks of 18-hour days, but she owed them that much. Lucas was patient through all of it, taking care of Emma, sending Isabella encouraging texts, showing up at her office at midnight with food when she forgot to eat. He never pushed, never demanded she prioritize him over the work, just provided steady support while she closed this chapter of her life. The day she signed the final documents, Victoria walked her out of the building for the last time as CEO. "What now?" Victoria asked. "Now I figure out who I am when I'm not Richard Laurent's daughter, or Laurent Holdings' CEO. Sounds terrifying. It really is." Isabella looked back at the building where she'd spent the last 8 years of her life. "But also kind of exciting? You're going to be fine. Better than fine." Victoria hugged her, fierce and quick. "And I'm taking that consulting position at Morrison's firm, so I'll see you around. Someone has to make sure you don't completely abandon the corporate world." Isabella drove to Brookline in the middle of the afternoon, something she'd never done on a weekday. Lucas was surprised when she showed up, even more surprised when she had a duffel bag. "Everything okay?" "I did it. I'm done. Officially unemployed for the first time in my adult life." She set down the bag. "And I was wondering if maybe I could stay here for a few days. My penthouse feels wrong now, like it belongs to someone else. And I thought, if you and Emma don't mind, I could be here while I figure out what comes next." Lucas pulled her into a kiss that was relief and joy and promise all tangled together. "We don't mind. Emma's going to lose her mind when she finds out." "Oh, finds out what?" Emma appeared from her room, homework in hand, and stopped dead when she saw Isabella's bag. "Are you moving in?" "Just for a little while," Isabella said quickly, "until I figure out—" "Yes!" Emma threw her homework in the air. "Dad, she's moving in. I told you she would. I told you." "You absolutely did not predict this," Lucas said, but he was grinning. "I did in my head. That counts." Emma grabbed Isabella's hand. "You can have the guest room, but honestly, you're probably going to end up in Dad's room anyway because you guys are gross like that. Also, we need to make a chore chart because if you're living here, you have to do chores. That's the rule." "Emma, breathe," Lucas laughed. But Isabella was laughing too, actually laughing, and thought about how different this was from every other major life decision she'd ever made. No strategy, no careful planning, just a choice made from wanting instead of should. That first week was an adjustment. Isabella wasn't used to being home during the day, wasn't used to the rhythms of a household that revolved around school schedules and dinner times instead of meetings and deadlines. She helped Emma with homework, went grocery shopping for the first time in years, learned to cook actual meals instead of eating takeout over the sink. It was strange and uncomfortable and absolutely perfect. Lucas gave her space to figure things out, didn't pressure her about the future or what she was going to do next. But 2 weeks in, lying in bed after Emma had gone to sleep, he asked gently, "How are you feeling? About everything?" "Unmoored," Isabella admitted. "I spent 30 years knowing exactly who I was and what I was supposed to do, and now I'm just here, without a title or a purpose or a plan. It's terrifying, but also kind of freeing, like I can be anyone now. Try anything. Make mistakes without it reflecting on the company or my father or the Laurent legacy." She rolled to face him. "I'm thinking about going back to school, getting a degree in something completely impractical like philosophy or art history, Or maybe traveling. Emma was talking about wanting to see Paris, and I thought we could all go together this summer. We could do that. Though fair warning, Emma will want to see every dolphin-related thing in France, which I'm not sure is a large category. We'll make it work. Isabella traced patterns on his chest. Thank you. For being patient with me while I figured this out. For not pushing or demanding or making me choose between you and the company. You would have resented me if I had. And besides, the choice had to be yours. Lucas caught her hand, brought it to his lips. Are you happy? Actually happy? Getting there. Ask me again in 6 months when the novelty's worn off and I'm going stir-crazy from too much domesticity. Deal. They fell asleep tangled together, and Isabella thought about how this casual intimacy, this comfort with another person, was something she'd never let herself have before. How she'd always kept relationships surface level, controlled, safe. But safe had also meant lonely, and she was done with lonely. The real test came 2 months later when Marcus called with a crisis. A merger had fallen through, investors were panicking, and the board was requesting Isabella's input. I know you're done with all this, Marcus said, apologetic but desperate. But you know the Henderson deal inside and out. Could you consult? Just a few hours? Help us salvage this? Isabella's first instinct was to say yes, to drop everything and fix the problem because that's what she'd always done. But she looked around Lucas's apartment, at Emma's homework spread across the dining table, at the dinner she'd been preparing, at the life she was trying to build, and made a different choice. No, she said. I'm sorry, Marcus, but I'm not the right person for this anymore. Try Sarah Chen in strategic planning. She worked on the preliminary negotiations. She'll know what to do. After she hung up, Lucas appeared from the bedroom where he'd been giving her privacy. That sounded hard. It was, but also right. Isabella leaned into him. They'll figure it out. And if they don't, that's not my problem anymore. Look at you, setting boundaries. I'm so proud. She laughed, but she was proud too. Proud of choosing herself, of protecting the life she was building instead of defaulting to old patterns. Emma's spring concert arrived on a Tuesday, and this time Isabella didn't have to cancel anything to attend. She sat between Lucas and Carol and Jim, watching Emma sing with her class, and felt a contentment she'd never experienced in any boardroom. After the concert, Emma dragged them all to the same ice cream place they'd gone to after the winter performance. So, Emma said, working on a cone that was definitely going to drip everywhere. Mrs. Patterson asked if you're going to be at the end-of-year picnic. I said yes. Was I right? You were right, Isabella confirmed. Good, because I told everyone you were my almost stepmom, and it would be embarrassing if you didn't show up. Lucas choked on his coffee. Emma, we talked about the stepmom thing. I said almost. That's accurate, isn't it? Emma looked between them with exaggerated innocence. Unless you're planning to break up, which would be dumb because you're obviously in love. Carol was trying not to laugh. Jim had given up and was openly grinning. We're not breaking up, Lucas said, shooting Isabella a help-me look. And we're not getting married tomorrow either, Isabella added. But Emma's right that we love each other. So, almost stepmom is probably accurate enough for second-grade classification systems. Emma beamed. See? I'm always right. You're always confident, Lucas corrected. There's a difference. Not really. That night, after Emma was asleep and they were cleaning up the kitchen together, a routine that had become second nature, Lucas brought it up again. Sorry about Emma and the stepmom thing. She's been on this kick lately about family definitions. It's okay. It's actually kind of sweet that she thinks of me that way. Isabella dried a dish, thoughtful. Do you think about it? Marriage, I mean? Eventually? Lucas set down the pan he was washing. Honestly? Yeah. Not right now. We're still figuring out the living situation, and you're still figuring out who you are outside the company. But eventually? Yeah, I think about it. Me too, Isabella admitted, which is terrifying because 6 months ago, I couldn't imagine being in a relationship at all, let alone thinking about marriage and stepmotherhood and all the things that come with that. We don't have to figure it all out tonight. I know, but I wanted you to know I'm thinking about it, about a future with you and Emma, about what that might look like. Lucas pulled her close, soapy hands and all. For what it's worth, I can't imagine a future that doesn't include you anymore. You've become essential, Isabella, to both of us. Essential, she repeated, testing the word. I like the sound of that. They kissed, sweet and slow, and somewhere in the apartment, Emma yelled, I'm trying to sleep. Keep it down. They broke apart laughing, and Isabella thought about how far she'd come from that woman at the Winter Gala, watching Lucas leave early for bedtime stories and feeling something crack in her carefully controlled world. She'd lost the company, the title, the identity she'd built her entire life around. But she'd gained something infinitely more valuable, a life that felt real instead of performed, relationships built on choice instead of obligation, love that didn't require her to be anything other than herself. 3 months later, on a Sunday morning in early summer, Isabella woke up to the smell of pancakes and Emma's off-key singing. She padded into the kitchen to find Lucas at the stove, Emma critiquing his technique with her usual authority. Morning, Lucas said, kissing her hello. Emma insisted on chocolate chip today. I tried to argue for blueberries, but I was outvoted. Democracy in action, Isabella said, pouring coffee. Can we go to the lake house next weekend? Emma asked, not looking up from the batter she was stirring. Grandma and Grandpa want to know if we're coming, and I said probably yes, but I wanted to check with you guys first. We can do that, Lucas confirmed. If Isabella's free? Isabella thought about her calendar, which was decidedly empty these days except for the occasional consulting call and the online philosophy course she'd started. Thought about the lake house, about s'mores and family time and the comfortable chaos of Carol and Jim's presence. I'm free, she said. Let's go. Emma cheered and Lucas smiled, and Isabella felt that same contentment settle over her. This simple Sunday morning with pancakes and plans and people who chose her, this was what happiness looked like. Not perfect, not calculated, not strategic, just real. Later that afternoon, she and Lucas sat on the apartment's small balcony while Emma was at a friend's house. The weather was warm, summer approaching, and Boston spread out before them in a way that felt full of possibility instead of pressure. I got offered a job, Isabella said. Lucas looked up from his book. Yeah, doing what? Teaching business ethics at BU. Part-time, just 2 classes per semester. They want someone with real corporate experience who can talk about the messy reality of ethical decision-making, not just the theoretical framework. That sounds perfect for you. I think it might be. I'd still have time for other things. Consulting work, maybe writing, definitely family stuff. But it would give me structure, purpose, something to do with all this knowledge I've accumulated. She paused. I think I'm going to take it. Then you should. Lucas set down his book, giving her full attention. You've been floating for a few months, figuring things out. It's good to have direction again, as long as it's the right direction for you. It feels right. Scary, but right. Isabella leaned into him. A year ago, if someone had told me I'd be teaching instead of running a company, living in Brookline instead of a penthouse, choosing pancakes over board meetings, I would have thought they were describing someone else's life. But it's your life now. It's my life now, she agreed, and I'm happy with it. Actually, genuinely happy. Is that allowed? Lucas laughed. Pretty sure happiness is always allowed. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the neighborhood come alive around them, kids playing in yards, neighbors chatting on stoops, the ordinary rhythm of lives being lived. And Isabella thought about her father's words in the hospital, about not sacrificing love for safety, about choosing bravely instead of choosing correctly. She'd chosen. Not the safe path, not the expected path, but the one that led toward love and mess and real human connection. And it had made all the difference. That evening, Emma came home from her friend's house full of energy and opinions about the upcoming lake trip. We should invite your dad, she announced to Isabella. Grandpa Richard, he probably wants to see the lake house, right? Isabella and Lucas exchanged glances. Richard had been to Sunday dinners twice now, awkward but genuine attempts to rebuild their relationship. But a whole weekend at the lake felt like a bigger step. I can ask him, Isabella said carefully, but he might not be comfortable with that much family time. Well, he should be. Family is important. That's what Grandma Carol always says. Emma flopped onto the couch. Besides, if he's going to be part of our family, he needs to learn how to relax. He's very tense. Emma, he's not, Isabella started, then stopped, because Richard was part of their family, in his own complicated way. And maybe Emma was right that he needed to learn how to exist outside of boardrooms and hospitals. She called him that night. Dad? Emma had an idea. We're going to the lake house next weekend, and she thought you might want to come. Silence on the other end. Then, to Jim and Carol's place? With Lucas and Emma? And me? Yes, it's okay if you're not comfortable with it. I'd like that, Richard said quietly. If you think they wouldn't mind having me. I think they'd be happy to have you. Fair warning, it's very casual. No business talk, no formality, just family time. I can try casual. He almost laughed. I'll probably be terrible at it, but I can try. The lake house weekend arrived wrapped in the kind of perfect early summer weather that made everything feel possible. Richard drove up separately, arriving mid-afternoon with an awkwardness that made Isabella's chest ache. I brought wine, he said, holding up bottles like a shield. And some steaks. I thought I could grill. You grill? Isabella couldn't hide her surprise. I used to, before the company consumed everything, thought I might remember how. Jim took charge immediately, guiding Richard toward the grill with enthusiastic instructions and terrible dad jokes. Carol corralled Emma into helping make salad. Lucas and Isabella watched from the porch, witnessing the strange alchemy of their worlds colliding. This is surreal, Isabella murmured. Your dad's wearing jeans, Lucas observed. I didn't know that was possible. I didn't either. But there he was, Richard Laurent in jeans and a polo shirt, attempting to grill steaks while Jim told stories about Claire's teenage years, and Carol periodically checked to make sure he wasn't burning anything. Emma hovered nearby, asking him questions about business and dolphins with equal seriousness, and Richard answered with more patience than Isabella had ever seen him display. He's trying, Lucas said softly. Give him credit for that. I am. It's just, I've never seen him like this. Casual, almost relaxed. Maybe that's what happens when you let go of control. You find out who you are underneath it. Isabella thought about her own transformation, about the person she'd been at that winter gala versus who she was now. Maybe people could change. Maybe it was never too late to choose differently. Dinner was chaotic in the best way. Emma dominated conversation. Jim and Lucas argued about proper s'more construction technique. Carol mediated with patient amusement. Richard was quiet mostly, observing, but Isabella caught him smiling at Emma's jokes, engaging when spoken to, trying. After Emma went to bed, the adults sat around the fire. Richard looked uncomfortable, clearly out of his element, but he'd stayed instead of retreating to his room. Thank you, he said eventually, addressing Jim and Carol, for including me. I know this is your family tradition, and I'm grateful to be part of it. You're Isabella's father, Carol said simply. That makes you family. Plus, anyone who can handle Emma's interrogation techniques deserves respect. She's formidable. She gets it from Claire, Jim said. Our daughter never met a question she didn't need answered immediately. They talked about Claire for a while, sharing stories. Isabella watched her father listen, saw the way he absorbed this picture of a family that loved openly, that spoke about grief and joy with equal honesty. Saw him learning, in real time, what healthy relationships looked like. Later, walking along the lake's edge with Lucas while the others cleaned up, Isabella felt something settle in her chest. I think we're going to be okay, she said. All of us. My dad, me, you and Emma, this weird blended family we're building. Yeah, it won't be perfect. Emma will keep making inappropriate comments about marriage. My dad will probably have relapses into corporate mode. I'll struggle with not having a 5-year plan, but we'll figure it out together. Lucas stopped walking, pulled her close. I love you, Isabella Laurent. Not for what you've accomplished or what you can provide. Just for you, the real, messy, complicated you. I love you too. She kissed him, soft and sure. Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself. For choosing me when I didn't think I was worth choosing. You've always been worth choosing. You just needed to believe it. They stood there by the water, wrapped in each other in summer warmth, and Isabella thought about the journey that had brought her here. From that winter gala to this moment, from armor to vulnerability, from performance to authenticity, from transaction to love. She'd lost the company, but she'd found herself. And in the small, warm apartment that had become home, in the chaotic family dinners and school concerts and lazy Sunday mornings, in the steady presence of a man who chose her without conditions and a child who challenged her to be brave, Isabella had discovered what it meant to be truly wealthy, not in money or power or professional achievement, but in love freely given and gratefully received, in a life chosen rather than calculated, in the knowledge that she was enough, exactly as she was, and always had been. The snow began to fall that night, unexpected for early summer but fitting somehow, like the universe was bringing things full circle. Isabella watched it from the cabin window, Lucas asleep upstairs, Emma dreaming in her room, her father reading by the fireplace one floor down. 3 lives that had reshaped themselves around her, and one life, her own, that she'd finally learned to shape around love instead of fear. In the morning, Emma would demand pancakes. Lucas would burn them slightly, Richard would offer awkward help, Carol and Jim would mediate with practiced ease, and Isabella would sit at the table, surrounded by the beautiful mess of the family she'd chosen and who had chosen her back, and know with absolute certainty that this ordinary, complicated, perfectly imperfect moment was everything she'd been searching for. Not control, not achievement, not proof of worth, just love, completely and freely chosen. And that was more than enough. It was everything.